Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto leaves Konoha and is trained by Itachi Harem part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Naruto groaned. It was his third term in the academy. Third term. He'd failed the graduation exam twice already. Damn the Bunshin no Jutsu, he just couldn't get it to work. And to top it off, this term he was in class with the two girls he'd had crushes on since he was 5, and had fallen in love with when he was 9. And they were both crushing on that arrogant, brooding Uchiha bastard, Sasuke. Now, Naruto was making his way home, annoyed by the condition his life was falling into. He just couldn't get the help he needed. He didn't want to bother Iruka-sensei too much, what with all the other students in the class, and the Hokage was too busy to help him, leaving Naruto with subpar taijutsu, no jinjutsu to speak of, and horrible ninjutsu. Damn it, why did everybody hate him? Shaking his head slightly in despair, Naruto opened the door of his shabby apartment, and froze. There, in his home, were two figures he didn't recognize. They were the same height, both seemed to be looking at him, but it was hard to tell. They were wearing high-collared black cloaks with red clouds on them, and straw hats that further concealed their faces. Prominently displayed were two rings, one marked Shu worn by the figure on the left, on his right ring finger, the other marked Nen worn by the figure on the right, on her, or at least, Naruto assumed it was female judging by the delicate hand, left ring finger. "This is him, Mai?" said the male. "Yes," replied the female, her voice confirming Naruto's suspicion. "He's grown. He's still young and it's been 2 years. Of course he's grown." "Uzumaki Naruto," he said calmly. "Allow me to introduce myself. I am Uchiha Itachi, and my companion is Kazekeka Mai. We are here to take you away from this village for a time, and when you come back, it will be with the knowledge and power to gain all that you desire." "Hey, Itachi, do you really have to make this sound like a deal with the devil? Because seriously, unless you made some kind of deal with that masked asshole behind my back, this really shouldn't sound like a deal with the devil." "Shut up," growled Itachi. Naruto continued to stare, too shocked and confused to move, or even to put two and two together and recognize Itachi's clan name. Itachi refocused on Naruto. "Perhaps I should rephrase," he said. "You have two choices. You can remain here, trapped in your current place without aid, and we will walk away. Or you can come with us for a time, and we will show you what it means to be Hokage. Though there are times I wonder being Hokage to be acknowledged is a bit too selfish to really be worthy of being Hokage, don't you think?" "Mai, this was your idea, but now it's time to shut up and let me handle things." Naruto finally moved. "Is she always like this?" he asked, pointing at Mai. Itachi sighed. "Usually." Okay, Naruto nodded. He thought back over everything that had happened in his life and came to a decision. "I'll go with you." "Hokage-sama, Uzumaki Naruto has disappeared." "What?" shouted Sarutobi Hiruzen, the Sandaime Hokage. "When? How?" "We don't know, sir." Beneath her straw hat, the sole female of the trio walking down the path away from Konoha smiled slightly, having just received the memories of one of the shadow clones she'd left behind to observe the village. "Hey, it seems like we've caused quite a stir," she commented cheerfully. "But maybe Hokage-sama would have liked to know. Should we have told Hokage-sama? I think we should have told Hokage-sama. Do you think we should have told Hokage-sama?" Itachi pointedly ignored her, causing Mai to pout. "Ma, you're no fun at all," she said. "I know life hasn't been all sunshine and roses, but I still want my cheerful teammate back. Stop brooding. What would Shursui-sama think of this?" Naruto stared at her in confusion as he followed them. Itachi was so used to this that he simply continued to ignore her. So go figure, this would be one of those occasions where she had a short fuse. Mai struck faster than Naruto could blink and Itachi could act. She knocked away his straw hat and stared straight into his blood-red Sharingan eyes with her own, even as the Mitsutomo of her Sharingan twisted and fused into an interwoven star. "Tsukuyami," she intoned before he could react. Itachi now found himself strapped to a cross, his eyes widening in horror, the world around him red with a blood moon in the sky, himself and his companion in bizarre negative colors. "Now, Itachi," said Mai, "the torture begins." For the next 72 hours he suddenly realized that there were a lot more of him around, and a whole lot more of her. And every one of her held a stick with a feather attached to the end. Up on a hill, boxes of Pocky were stacked, with additional copies of his companion going through the seals for a Katon Jutsu at a painfully slow pace. You will be forced to watch your precious Pocky burn, while being constantly tickled with all of these feathers. There was a truly frightening sadistic gleam in her eyes. After what felt like an eternity, all the Pocky was consumed by the flames and the torture momentarily stopped as everything was reset. 71 hours, 59 minutes and 59 seconds left, came the taunting voice. Well, that was fun, she said as her companion collapsed to the ground, shaking his head to try and clear it of the insane images she'd shown to him. She smiled. Now then, Uchiha Itachi, are you ready to lighten up? Standing up, Itachi retrieved his straw hat and put it back on. Where are the therapists? He muttered. Mai giggled. Didn't you hear? They're looking for more therapists. I made a mistake, didn't I? Said Naruto, looking to Itachi. Every day, I think that of allowing her to follow me, said Itachi dryly. And yet I am constantly reminded that it would have been more foolish to try and stop her. You're damn right, it would have been foolish to try and stop me. All the legions of hell couldn't do more than inconvenience me. I am a goddess given flesh and nothing can stop me. She'll get better, said Itachi reassuringly. Incurably insane or not, she can at least feign sanity well enough for others. Naruto wasn't so sure of that. It had been a month since they'd left Konoha. About 2 weeks in, Mai had started to act more seriously, and Naruto finally felt like he'd get out of this with his sanity intact. Now, they were ready to begin Naruto's training. Alright, Naruto-kun, said Mai. It was amazing how much more mature she sounded now. We're not going to teach you much that you wouldn't learn in the academy, just some clone techniques, since those are your weakness. Don't worry, these will be easier to use than the standard Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto nodded attentively, while Mai walked over to a nearby pond. First, let me introduce you to the most important of all Bunshin Jutsus, said Mai. Now, I can actually perform any clone technique without hand seals, and when we're finished with you, every jutsu you know will be possible without hand seals. But first Mai formed a cross with her hands. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, intoned Mai. Another Mai suddenly appeared, without even a puff of smoke, an indication of absolute chakra control. The shadow clone technique uses more chakra than the standard clone technique. However, the clones are solid, making it much more useful than the standard technique. Not only that, but anything your clones learn is sent back to you when they're dispelled, meaning that with one clone, you could get 2 days of experience in one, or with 1,000 clones, you could get 20 years of experience in a week. Naruto's response was to sputter in shock. Yes, you can see how this would speed your training, don't you? She said. Anyways, next is the Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu, a water clone of Mai formed from the pond. The Doton Kage Bunshin, this time, a clone formed from mud. And my personal favorite, the Futon Kage Bunshin, this time, wind seemed to gather before another clone of Mai formed, indistinguishable from the rest. 2 of the clones walked away, and then one clone stabbed another. The stabbed clone suddenly exploded into wind, apparently cutting wind, as the other clone was cut apart, falling into mud. Mai pulled a ninjato out from seemingly nowhere, and cut down another clone, revealing it to be the water clone. The shadow clone walked away from Naruto, Mai, and Itachi. And this, Naruto-kun, said Itachi, is a technique I created and taught to my Bunshin Daibakuha. No sooner had the words left Itachi's lips than the clone exploded like a bomb. Naruto's eyes widened and Mai smiled. These are the techniques we will be teaching you, she said. It will not be all about learning to fight, said Itachi. You will be studying history and academia. You will be practicing chakra control exercises that will allow you to walk up walls, stick to ceilings, and treat water like solid ground. There will be some fun in games though, said Mai. Those have a purpose too. We will be promoting agility, stealth, dexterity, and intelligence. You'll have to deal with puzzles to challenge and sharpen the mind. You have a lot to live up to if you wish to be Hokage, and it won't be easy, even if you can cheat your way up. But in the end, it will be worth it. Itachi smiled at Naruto. Are you ready, Naruto-kun? Yes, said Naruto. Come on, let's get started. It had been close to 2 years since Uzumaki Naruto disappeared, and a few people were still reeling from the effects of it. Moods had ranged from desperate to terrified to hopeful, or overjoyed. The longer he was gone, the more people shifted towards apathy, other than a distinct lack of annoying, over-the-top pranks performed by a loud-mouthed orange-wearing blonde lunatic. Things weren't that different. For some, though, the concern never went away. They continued to wonder at what had become of Naruto. Had he been killed? Had he run away to an enemy village? To live as a civilian, after failing to graduate from the academy so many times? And a few beat themselves up over it, angry with themselves for allowing all that had happened to Naruto. This was the village approached by a young boy via the main road into Konoha. It wasn't all that different from how he remembered it, and he wondered how people would react to his return. The boy's face, clothes, and hair were completely concealed by the long-necked black cloak and straw hat he wore. The cloak itself was decorated with golden nine-tailed foxes, some portrayed as sleeping, some running, some jumping, some sitting stoically, like a guardian, and some of the more chibi ones frolicking about, as though they were fox kits playing together. Perhaps the most important, though, was the large decal on the back of the cloak, which showed a golden fox resting between two other nine-tailed foxes, one a standout pink color, the other a bright, platinum color, all of their tails twined together to create the appearance of 9 large tails of gold, platinum, and pink. The boy stepped up to the guard post outside the gate, where a Chunin looked him over. "And you are?" he asked gruffly. The boy tilted his straw hat up a bit to reveal some of the details of his face, his sapphire cerulean blue eyes, whisker-marked cheeks, and spiky golden hair. The guard's eyes widened. "Uzumaki Naruto," he said warmly. "What but when how ha?" Naruto didn't even blink. Welcome home," said the Chunin after taking a moment to recompose himself. "Have to say, never expected to see you again. Kind of nice though things have been quiet without you around." Is it really that awkward?" "Kinda nice get up, by the way. Anyways, you should probably go see Hokage-sama. He's been really worried about you." "Yeah, I plan to. Thanks. I've been worried about how people would react, so best to see him immediately." "Probably you disappear for 2 years, then show up like this." The Chunin shook his head. "Unbelievable." "Believe it," said Naruto. "Because it just happened." Naruto walked down the streets of Konoha, engulfed in the early morning mist, his goal the Hokage Tower. He'd kept his hat on, intent on hiding his identity for the moment. He wasn't certain how people would react to the return of the demon, as he vaguely recalled some had taken to calling him. He was mostly afraid that they would try to run him back out of Konoha, meaning seeing Sarutobi was his highest priority. The man was one of the few who acknowledged him, and the only one who could guarantee he wouldn't be forced to flee the village. 2 years under the tutelage of Itachi and Mai had taught him a great deal. Thanks to Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, he was pretty much unparalleled in the fields he'd studied, right up to having 80 years of academics stuffed into his head, the most boring part of the whole thing by far in his opinion. By the end of his first year, he was able to maintain several hundred clones for an extended period, so he had, easily, over a century worth of total studies and training under his belt. This was not to say it hadn't repeatedly given him the mother of all headaches, but still, it was well worth it. Combined with his near-absolute chakra control and the strategic mind he'd been taught to properly cultivate, he could prove a dangerous foe even for advanced ninja. He'd been taught both Mai and Itachi's preferred taijutsu styles. Mai's was a variant of the Juken, the Muraken, which targeted an opponent's nerve clusters and pressure points, while Itachi's, Hagosha Shizai, was a sit, wait, block, deflect, and counter style, more pacifistic and defensive than Mai's Muraken. Mai had also instructed him in the arts of controlling his chakra externally, unleashing enormous levels of highly focused chakra at once, and containing large amounts of chakra in a confined space. When he asked what it was all for, she merely told him it would be useful to him someday, a fact she knew thanks to a unique ninjutsu of hers, known as Toadama. When he'd asked about that, she'd refused to give him any details. Naruto was also fast. Without his weights, he could bring himself up to Chunin-level speeds in short bursts. With the weights, he could still get to the high end of the Genin spectrum in short bursts. His perfection of the taijutsu styles he'd been taught meant that, in a pure taijutsu spar without his weights, Naruto could beat Itachi every 1 in 5 or so spars. However, that was actually just holding off Itachi enough to wear his big brother out, as Itachi had a rather fragile body. Lack of that was one of Mai's key strengths over Itachi, though her far more questionable sanity likely mitigated that advantage. Naruto shook his head. That wasn't his concern at the moment. Looking up, he realized that he was in front of the Hokage Tower, and proceeded to enter the building. He walked up several flights of stairs before arriving before the Hokage's secretary. She looked across her desk at him inquisitively. "Excuse me, but may I see the Hokage?" he said politely. "I know I don't have an appointment, but well, it's been a while, and I'm sure he'd be happy to see me." The secretary, Kiriki, was silent for a moment. That voice was familiar, then her eyes widened as she recognized it. She squinted slightly, trying to see his face there. The familiar whisker marks that she hadn't seen in 2 years. Kiriki smiled. "Of course, Naruto-kun," she said. Naruto was surprised she recognized him, but didn't mind. Kiriki had always been kind to him. He pushed his hat up a bit and lifted his head to give her a warm smile of gratitude. "Arigato," he said, stepping past her into the door of the Hokage's office. He lifted a hand and knocked gently. The Hokage sighed. He was losing. Again. He just never could quite seem to beat the monstrous foe that was paperwork. The bane of the Kage, no, of all village leaders. What kind of cold, cruel, evil-hearted person devised this monstrosity? Sarutobi was just beginning to entertain a fantasy that involved all the paperwork in Hai no Kuni and a very big Ketan Jutsu when he heard a knock on the door. Enter, he said, glad for a distraction from the paperwork. The door opened and in stepped a cloaked figure. Sarutobi studied the figure closely. He was male, that much was obvious to Sarutobi. He was about 5'3" tall, but that was all he could really determine, due to the straw hat. The cloak, however, was of particular interest to him. He knew of no one who wore a cloak decorated with golden kyubi no kitsune. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow. And who might you be, young man? He asked. Sarutobi couldn't be certain, but he thought he could actually feel a smirk forming on the boy's lips. I'm gone for 2 years and you forget all about me? He asked, reaching up and removing his straw hat to reveal a whiskered face with deep blue eyes and spiky, golden blonde hair. I'm hurt, Aji-san. Sarutobi's eyes widened. And Naruto? He asked, standing up. He then lunged forward and wrapped the blonde in a tight hug. Where have you been these last 2 years? Naruto smiled as he returned the hug of his grandfather figure. After the two broke apart, Sarutobi returned to his desk and Naruto stood in front of it, smiling. I was taken out of the village for training, he said. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow while Naruto pulled one hand out of the sleeve and into his cloak, where he grabbed a storage scroll before putting the arm back into his sleeve. He held the scroll out. Minakin told me to give this to you. Sarutobi's eyes widened. Mai, he said. Do you mean Kazekeka Mai? He asked. Naruto looked confused and nodded. Uncertainly, Sarutobi reached out the scroll and unrolled it. He pushed chakra into it, activating it and releasing the contents. Out popped 2 scrolls, a small one the size of the storage scroll, and a large one Sarutobi recognized. The forbidden scroll of sealing that had been stolen 4 years ago, during the chaos of the Uchiha massacre. Setting the forbidden scroll aside in shock, Sarutobi looked at the smaller scroll before looking up at Naruto. Naruto, he said slowly. Was there anyone there, anyone, besides you and Mai? Naruto nodded. Yeah, he said. Itachi Nizen, he's Sasuke's older brother. Sarutobi's body momentarily locked up before he breathed a slight sigh of relief. Alright, Naruto, he said. Before we discuss what you learned, I should tell you something about Itachi and Mai. Sarutobi then launched into an explanation of how Naruto's senseis were S-rank Nukenin of Konoha, and were presently considered the 2 most dangerous shinobi in the bingo book. Hell, the bounty on Mai's head was close to 500 million ryo, and flee-on-site orders had been placed by all the hidden villages regarding the 2, a feat only ever matched by the yellow flash of Konoha, Namikaze Minato. He proceeded to explain that Itachi wasn't exactly a criminal, but for the sake of protecting the village, he'd willingly allowed himself to be labeled as one. Mai, on the other hand, was a criminal, but also an unknown element. Her known crime was the theft of the forbidden scroll of sealing, the same one that Naruto had just returned for her. More questionable was her exact involvement in the Uchiha massacre. While relieved to know that his metaphorical brother and sister weren't the bad people most apparently believed they were, he was uncertain how to take the knowledge of their involvement in the Uchiha massacre, and was told by Sarutobi to mention none of this to anyone, not even the identity of his teachers. He understood, and promised to keep it a secret, something he'd intended to do anyways at Itachi's request. So, Naruto, continued Sarutobi. Now that that is out of the way, care to tell me what you learned? No doubt something for you to use to turn this village upside down? Naruto grinned ruefully. No, actually, said Naruto. They didn't teach me many jutsu, but they did tell me about the kyubi. Sarutobi's eyes widened and Naruto raised a hand, forestalling any questions. They explained it all to me so that I'd understand, and taught me how to pull out the fox's chakra. I can control it up to about 3 taels worth of chakra, but while it makes me stronger, I start running more on instinct than anything else. I tried pulling out the 4th tael, once. At that point, I'm running completely on animalistic and demonic instinct, and neither me nor kyubi is in control. I try not to use the chakra unless absolutely necessary. I save it as my weapon of last resort and trump card. Usually, I only need a bit of chakra, not even a single tael, and it enhances my speed, strength, and senses to the extremes. I've also trained my senses considerably, continued Naruto. But more to the point, I've learned a few ninjutsu, clone techniques to be specific. I can use all 3 academy jutsu without seals, and all my clone jutsu can be done without seals as well. I know Mizubunshin no Jutsu, Doton Kaiga Bunshin, Futon Kaiga Bunshin, Kaiga Bunshin no Jutsu, and Taiju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Sarutobi stared, wide-eyed. I was also taught Bunshin Daibukuha, which is used in conjunction with Kage Bunshin to make the clones explode with the force of a dozen or so explosive tags. My Nekin had me sign a summoning contract, but no, I'm not gonna tell you what it was, that's a surprise for later. I've also studied academics, politics, tactics, strategy, and history, and I've trained my chakra control to an extreme level. I have chakra reserves surpassing Kage level, and can maintain up to 1,000 shadow clones for several hours. I've also been taught both Mai Nekin and Itachi Nizan's preferred taijutsu styles. Sarutobi was staring, wide-eyed, mouth gaping, hardly believing what he was hearing. 2 years, and this is what Itachi and Mai had done to him? Even with his limited repertoire of techniques, if what he said was true, he could give Chunins a run for their money without the Kyuubi, and possibly even some Jonin. Add in the Kyuubi, and he could push people like Hatake Kakashi and Mado Gai. Sarutobi closed his mouth and studied Naruto. Be that as it may, he said slowly. I think it would be best for you to return to the academy. Graduation exams are tomorrow. You should take some time to get used to being here. If you don't want to, then I'll see what I can do. That's fine, said Naruto. I was kind of hoping for that anyway. Mai Nekin and Itachi Nizan suggested I use that to get experience and make friends, then climb my way up the ranks. Yes, that seems like something they'd say, said Sarutobi. Itachi simply because it's the wise decision. And Mai because she's an absolute lunatic. He smiled. I'll contact Irika and inform him that you'll be returning to the academy, in the same class you'd been attending when you left. You'll have to tell me all about your adventures at some point, but for now, you should probably get home, and yes, that apartment is still all yours, though probably more than a little dusty at this point. Naruto nodded and turned to leave. Oh, and Naruto? Welcome home. You've been missed more than you could ever know. Naruto seemed to freeze momentarily, then let out a foxy grin. That's good to hear, Aji-san, he said. Oh, and something else? There's an easy solution to the paperwork problem. Sarutobi looked at Naruto, eagerness evident on his face. His eyes were pleading for the information. Naruto's grin widened. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. With that, Naruto left. Sarutobi didn't move. He was frozen. No, it couldn't be that simple. But it was. Thunk. Naruto laughed as he heard the Hokage slam his head down on his own desk, and faintly heard his Aji-san muttering stupid to himself repeatedly. Naruto replaced his straw hat and left the Hokage tower, for once feeling content with where his life was going. And more importantly, feeling that his life was actually going somewhere. Settle down, everyone! Shouted Irika using the big scary head jutsu. How he does that is still beyond the students, and even the Hokage hasn't figured it out. The class instantly settled down, much to the relief of Irika and Mizuki. Now that everyone has calmed down, said Irika, I'd like to first introduce you all to a fellow student who will be taking the graduation exam with you today. He's been absent most of this term since it seems a traveling shinobi decided to help tutor him to overcome difficulties he was having. A whisper ran through class, and Mizuki's jaw clenched imperceptibly. Come on in. The door of the classroom opened and everyone looked at the door eagerly, except for Uchiha Sasuke, Abirame Shino, and Nara Shikamaru, the first not caring, the second curious, but impassive, and the third simply looking over lazily, though all three already had a guess as to who it was. Through the door stepped a figure wearing a high-necked black cloak with golden nine-tailed fox decals on it, and a straw hat hiding his face. Everyone was now even more curious. Well, the Hokage said you changed your look, but damn, muttered Irika. The figure reached up and tilted the straw hat up, revealing deep blue eyes set in a handsome face with 3 whisker-like scars on each cheek. Almost all the girls developed immediate hearts in their eyes. The boy finally removed his straw hat to reveal spiky golden hair that drew a gasp from almost everyone present, as the full view now available showed everyone just who it was. He gave them a foxy grin that had more than half the girls blushing. Uzumaki Naruto returns, he said. Anyone miss me? The class stared, most of them in simple blank shock. Despite the blushes, most of the girls were berating themselves for thinking Naruto was handsome. Hyuga Hinata, on the other hand, had turned completely red. Naruto! Where have you been, man? Shouted Inuzuka Kiba. Similar shouts came from other students for a minute. Shut up! Shouted Irika, once more using the big scary head jutsu. The class quieted down. Alright, Naruto, why don't you take a seat next to Sasuke? If the girls are gonna be ogling the boys, it might as well be in the same direction. Every girl in class blushed at this statement, while Naruto merely nodded and walked over to take the seat next to Sasuke. Just before Naruto put his straw hat back on, The girls got a good look at Naruto compared to Sasuke, and even the Uchiha's most loyal fangirls felt there was no comparison, mostly because of the light and warmth in Naruto's eyes, in comparison to the cold eyes of the Uchiha, who, as he saw most of the girls ogling Naruto instead of him, started mentally dancing for joy. "Alright class, come with me," called Irika before leading the students outside to the target practice field. As some of you may already know, the Genin exam consists of a written test for ninjutsu, genjutsu, and taijutsu, a stealth test, and a target practice test. You must pass the written test, ninjutsu test, and at least 2 other tests to become genin. We start with target practice. Abirame Shino. Most of the participants got an average score at about 10 out of 20 hits. Uchiha Sasuke got 17 out of 20. Uzumaki Naruto, called Irika. Naruto stepped forward, his hands invisible within his sleeves. Most of the class was eagerly looking forward to finding out what Naruto could do. In the blink of an, Naruto's hands appeared, clutching shuriken, and the shuriken were immediately thrown, all at once, each one landing a bullseye on the head, torso, points where tendon cuts would be quite lethal, and one that had every male wincing slightly. The crotch. "Nothing is below the belt in the shinobi world," said Naruto, quoting Mai. Itachi had unconsciously covered his groin when Mai imparted this wisdom to Naruto. "We're ninjas, not samurai." Irika nodded in agreement, and marked Naruto 20 out of 20. Next was the genjutsu exam. This one could be voluntarily skipped, but that would result in a 0. The goal was first to dispel an opposing low-level genjutsu, and then place the teacher in a genjutsu. Each was worth up to 50 points, with more points received for dispelling quicker and making your own genjutsu last longer. Haruno Sakura performed the best, better than even Uchiha Sasuke. Then, it was once again Naruto's turn. Naruto immediately dispelled the genjutsu he was placed in, then turned his own genjutsu on Irika. Unfortunately for the academy instructor, he didn't realize his genjutsu was broken and that he'd fallen into one for over 30 seconds. He quickly dispelled the genjutsu when he caught on and smiled as he shook his head. Naruto was, once again, given a perfect score. The next test, stealth, was considered the most difficult, with the highest performers being Naruto, with a third perfect, Abirame Shino, and Uchiha Sasuke. Then came taijutsu, one of the 3 Naruto was actually looking forward to. Uchiha Sasuke, Uzumaki Naruto, called Irika. The 2 proceed into the ring, a few girls cheering on Sasuke while the rest remained conflicted. Hajime. Sasuke immediately charged forward, intent on ending the bout quickly. Naruto didn't budge an inch at first and then, his fingers snapped out, grabbing Sasuke's wrist as he lashed out with a punch. "Only a fool charges in blindly, Sasuke-san," said Naruto. He then pulled Sasuke in closer, throwing his free arm up in a horizontal block of Sasuke's body, and then pushed out with all his strength, sending Sasuke flying backwards. Sasuke stood up, glaring at Naruto, and then charged again. Rather than employ Itachi style again, Naruto decided to act out, and dodged Sasuke's punch before slamming his fingers into Sasuke's neck, numbing his body from the neck down. The Uchiha collapsed as Naruto jumped back. This taijutsu style is a variant of the Juken which attacks pressure points and nerve clusters to cause intense pain and numbness rather than actual damage, said Naruto. Once that's done, you can take the enemy at your leisure. Irika nodded, impressed. Sasuke, though angry with the humiliation, was also impressed by the effectiveness of the style. He'd have to ask Naruto about it later. Next came the written test, which was laughably easy for Naruto with his year's worth of academics. Another perfect. The ninjutsu test was even more laughably easy, particularly as a good 3 months of training had been dedicated to chakra control, which was equivalent to several decades under the effects of shadow clone training. Naruto's control was good enough, and he had used clone ninjutsu so many times that he could subconsciously mold the chakra necessary for any one of them. The same was true for the other 2 basic academy ninjutsu. This, of course, meant that he was damn near impossible to hit, since he could use Kawarimi no Jutsu on instinct to dodge almost any attack. Suffice to say that Naruto got the best score possible. Of course, he technically cheated, since he was severely overqualified for these tests. Well, what do we have here? Came a cold, calm voice. Mizuki trembled, clutching the forbidden scroll more tightly to his chest, looking around, trying to figure out where the voice was coming from. You know, I just had my Ototo return that scroll. I'd hate to see it taken away so soon, continued the voice. Especially by a pathetic traitor serving an equally pathetic snake. A figure appeared before Mizuki. One he recognized. No way, whispered Mizuki fearfully. Why you? Farewell, Mizuki, said Mai as her eyes turned blood red with black, 10-point double pentagrams. In the center of the pentagram was a small, slit pupil. Izanami. What the hell do you think happened to him? Asked the ANBU as he knelt down by the immobile form of Mizuki. I don't know, said Yuzuki Yugao, shaking her head. Whoever had stopped Mizuki's attempt to steal the forbidden scroll last night had done a serious number on him, as the man could no longer move or make sounds. He was obviously alive, but he might as well be dead. His body was rotting from the inside out, and no one could figure out how such a thing was possible. The only thing that was apparent was that it was painful. We'll take him back to Ibiki, said Yugao. Though, to be honest, I don't think there's anything he can do. You shouldn't have done that, said Itachi. Izanami is as dangerous to you as it is to the people you use it on. I'm touched by your concern, but you ignore me about your eyes all the time, said Mai. Anyways, it's the one method we have that is completely untraceable. Even Madara isn't aware of the exact effects, but everyone in Akatsuki knows about my Reitun, and we can't let anyone know what we've done with Naruto. The two fell silent after that, their thoughts drifting to Madara. The man was responsible for destroying Itachi's life. He was the man ultimately responsible for the destruction of the Uchiha clan. The necessity of that slaughter came back to him. For Naruto, the boy the two had come to see as their younger brother, his family was destroyed by the actions of that masked man. What had torn Mai's life apart was much more multifaceted. Her father was killed in the Kyuubi attack, and her mother was later murdered in front of her and her twin sister. As for Miyu, Mai fully blamed herself for that one. Madara's role in destroying Mai's life was focused around her father's death and the Uchiha massacre. Aware of what was to come, Mai had chosen to follow Itachi regardless. Though she would never admit it, he was the most important person she had left in the world. The two continued to walk along the path in silence. Their destination was an almost literal hole of criminals, packed with A-class nuke and even a few S-class. Their current mission for Akatsuki was simply to gather money. The hunt for the Biju and Jinchuriki, including Naruto, would be on hold for at least a few more months, probably at least another year. And the criminal pit they were headed to had plenty of good bounties to offer, and it was honest work, too. We're here, said Itachi a short while later as they stepped off the path and threw a minor genjutsu guarding the entrance down into the hideout. Itachi, let me handle this, said Mai, stepping forward. You don't particularly enjoy this, and it'll be nice to let loose a little. Mai. There's nothing to worry about, interrupted Mai, staring at Itachi with her Mangekyo Sharingan. 20,000 says these idiots can't even make me remove my hat. I am not taking that bet. Then we're in agreement, said Mai, smiling murderously as she pushed open the door. Letting out a small sigh, Naruto set his hat on the ground, removed his cloak to reveal a skin-tight black shirt beneath, and set the cloak on the ground as well. With that, the blonde created several dozen clones as he charged straight onto the water, then up the waterfall itself. Spinning around, Naruto raised his hands, and began a vicious spar with the shadow clones. He was so focused on his training that he didn't even notice the eyes watching him from various locations around the training ground. Are those clones solid? Questioned Ino. Why yes, stuttered Hinata. I heard about a Jonin technique that produces solid clones. Amazing, whispered Sakura as Naruto continued to spar with his clones. Wasn't he a dead last just 2 years ago? I heard he failed the Genin exams twice. And now look at him. Yes, said Ino, sounding almost dreamy. Elsewhere, the year's Jonin instructors were also watching the blonde train. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, muttered Yohi Kurinai. That kid can use a Jonin-level technique? According to Hokage-sama's report, that's only the tip of the iceberg, said Hatake Kakashi. Apparently, whoever took him from the village 2 years ago focused on teaching him the basics and learning to use his head. Outside of the basics, though, he does know quite a few clone techniques. He is pretty impressive, said Sarutobi-sama. Look at the way he fights. Isn't that the Hyuga-juken style? Similar, but not quite, said Kakashi. It's probably derived from the Juken. That style of combat was familiar to Kakashi. He knew there was someone outside of the Hyuga clan that used a Juken-based taijutsu style, but he couldn't remember who it was. Still elsewhere, a lone genin observed Naruto's training. Interesting, Orochimaru-sama will want to hear about this. Itachi was a man with a strong stomach. At the age of 4, he witnessed the loss of countless lives in the Third Great Shinobi War. At the age of 7, he graduated the Konoha Ninja Academy at the top of his class. At the age of 8, he mastered his Sharingan. At the age of 10, he became a Chunin. At the age of 13, he became an ANBU captain, then slaughtered the entire Uchiha clan almost single-handed in one night. But even Itachi nearly hurled at the sight of the massacre his partner had unleashed. It could be difficult to obtain the bounties with them in this condition, commented Itachi dryly, not bothering to conceal his discomfort. Mai, sitting in the midst of the slaughter, shrugged. Their condition isn't that bad, she said. Besides, I really needed to cut loose. You know how I get after using Izanami. And that is exactly why I felt you shouldn't have used it, said Itachi. Maya took the power of Shursue's Kodo Amatsukami and Miyu's Takamigara to help you recover when you went too far. Even with what's protecting you now, the things you see are not meant for the eyes of humans. I know that, said Mai. I know, Itachi, but whatever sacrifice I have to make, if it means that we've succeeded in our goal, then it will be worth it. I hope you're right. So do I. After several hours of sparring, Naruto finally wrapped up his training. Before stepping off the water, he cupped a handful in his hands and splashed it over his face, sighing lightly as the water cooled his burning hot forehead and washed the sweat from his face and hair. Stepping onto solid ground, Naruto walked over to retrieve his cloak and hat before leaving the training grounds. That kid Kakashi, could you have done that? Questioned Asuma, whistling lightly. The Cycloptean Jonin shook his head. No, he admitted. Naruto had done more than just walk on the waterfall while sparring with shadow clones. He'd created additional shadow clones, and both the real Naruto and the clones were throwing out the occasional jutsu. Most shinobi would have been exhausted within an hour, maybe two if they had particularly large reserves. In fact, I know of only one ninja who could pull that off, but well, she died a long time ago. It took a lot of effort on Kakashi's part not to dwell on the fate of Uzumaki Kushina. As the Jonin left, the three newly graduated genin who'd been watching Naruto started talking amongst themselves. Did you see that? Who knew Naruto was this awesome? Said Ino, smiling without restraint. He was fighting on a waterfall, said Sakura. How did he do that? It's a standard chakra control exercise, said Hinata. Both Uchiha fangirls immediately turned their attention to the shy Hyuga heiress, who blushed brightly. And my father taught it to me to help with the juken. Sakura and Ino stared at each other. If it was a standard exercise, how come they never learned it before? Sharing a nod, they simultaneously grabbed hold of Hinata, who squealed in surprise. Hinata, please teach us how to do that, they said in unison. A week later, after the graduation exam, the time for team assignments had arrived. By this point, rumors had spread regarding a certain missing Chunin, and many in the class were talking about it when Irika walked in. Seeing the gossiping students, he sighed and took a deep breath. Shut up! Shouted Irika, instantly quieting down the class. With that done, Irika cleared his throat. Now, I'm sure you're all curious about the rumors regarding Mizuki. I can neither confirm nor deny any of them. That said, I'd like to extend my congratulations to all of you for graduating. As of today, you're all real ninja, but that's only the beginning. You're ninja of the lowest rank, genin, and even among genin, you are only low-level rookies at the moment. Some of you have found the trials of this academy difficult, but once you experience the real world, you'll understand that these are challenges that true ninja could do in their sleep. And one day, as long as you remember the basics learned at this academy, and the warning I've given today, you'll also become true shinobi. As most of the students stared at Irika with some level of confusion, Naruto suppressed a snort at the truth in his first sensei's words. He knew the first few weeks would be dull D-rank missions. Itachi and Mai had spent months drilling patience into the overly thick skulls of every shadow clone he could produce, but his patience was already wearing thin. Either the two weren't as good at it as everyone thought, or Naruto's skull was thicker than they'd realized, which even Naruto could admit was probably the case, given how much he'd relied on the shadow clone training for academic studies. Team 7 will be Uzumaki Naruto, Haruno Sakura and Aburaim Shino, said Irika, snapping Naruto out of his reminiscence as he realized that he hadn't been paying attention to Irika's announcements, for which he berated himself. Then, Irika's words sunk in, and the blonde hid a slight smile at the knowledge that he was on a team with at least one of his crushes, as well as one of the few people who'd somewhat acknowledged him when he was younger. Meanwhile, Shino was silent in the face of Irika's words, while Sakura shifted slightly, evidently uncertain how to react. Team 8 will be Inuzuka Kiba, Hyuga Hinata and Yamanaka Ino, continued Irika. There was a groan from Ino over not being on a team with Sasuke. Team 9 will be Akita Kahori, Ishimura Jiro and Hirata Mana. Team 10 will be Akimichi Choji, Nara Shikamaru and Uchiha Sasuke. You're all free to go now, but be back no later than noon to meet your senseis. That is all. Good luck. Sounds of chairs scraping against the floor filled the room as the genin stood up and began gravitating towards their teammates before they left. Rather than stand up, Naruto continued to sit, taking slow, deep breaths, relaxing himself after his frustration over not paying attention. Naruto? Came a soft voice suddenly. Naruto let out a final deep breath and, smiling, turned to face his pink-haired teammate. Yes, Sakura-san? Sakura-san? Questioned Sakura curiously. Naruto flashed his old goofy grin at her as he stood up and pushed his straw hat off his head. It was obvious she was recalling the time when he used a different honorific. I thought it would be rude to refer to you so childishly, said Naruto, glancing around to see Shino walking towards them. Uzumaki-san, Haruno-san, said the Abirame with a slight nod. Good morning, Shino-san, said Sakura politely, smiling at the bug user as Naruto returned his nod. Shino-san, can I ask a favor of you? Said Naruto. Sakura looked at Naruto curiously, while Shino raised an eyebrow almost imperceptibly behind his sunglasses. I know your reputation, and I remember from 2 years ago. I don't mean to sound rude, but could you try to be a little friendly, I guess you could say? I don't want things to be all professional. Shino nodded in understanding. I understand, Uzumaki-san, he said. I'll try. You can start by simply calling me Naruto, replied the blonde, grinning slightly as the three started to walk out of the classroom. None of this Uzumaki-san business. Shino nodded again. Of course, Naruto-san, he said. The same for me, all right? Said Sakura, leaning forward slightly into Shino's sight with a smile. Yes, Sakura-san. Well, I guess it's something, said Naruto mildly as they stepped outside and sat down in the shade of a tree. Naruto pulled out 3 bentos, surprising his teammates as he handed one to each of them. Though caught off guard, they accepted nonetheless. After a few moments of silence in which Sakura subtly watched Naruto, the Rosette decided to speak up. What happened to you? She asked softly. Naruto and Shino paused, turning to look at Sakura, both knowing who she was directing the question to. Even though so many people hated you, you were like the light of this village. A goofy, happy-go-lucky kid, who was more wonderful than any of us would admit. That's all gone now, but you still seem happier. What could have happened in 2 years to do that to a person? Naruto was silent for a moment before letting out a small sigh. People change, Sakura-san, he said. The truth is, I just acted happy to conceal how I really felt. I was alone, and unhappy. 2 years away allowed me to finally go somewhere with my life, rather than being stuck in the rut of pain and depression I'd been stuck in. And now, I think I just might be able to finally find that true happiness that's eluded me for so long. His teammates were silent, listening intently to what was being said. On this occasion, Naruto didn't hide any of what he was feeling, and the truth of his words was evident in the emotions that filled his voice. Sakura turned slightly to face him, unable to hide her wonder at the changes in the young boy, while Shino managed to remain passive. Naruto shook his head. Well, one really shouldn't live in the past, said Naruto brightly. To be perfectly honest, that's why I've never been able to stand Sasuke. What do you mean? Questioned Sakura, confused. Uchiha Sasuke still thinks of the loss of his clan, answered Shino. Naruto nodded. That's his real motivation, said the blonde as he continued to eat. He wants to avenge the Uchiha clan. I can't exactly blame him for it, but revenge and hatred just breeds more vengeance and hatred. It's stupid, frankly. Well, I guess, said Sakura uncertainly. She couldn't argue with Naruto's logic, but she'd been chasing Sasuke for so long, it was hard to go against him in any way. If I were to wallow in that sort of thing, I'd have reason to destroy this entire village, said Naruto quietly, catching his companions by surprise, either of them ever realizing how bad things had really been for Naruto. But I swore an oath to myself to protect this village, and I'll never go back on my word. At the tower of the Hokage, the Sandaime leaned back from observing the genin with his viewing orb, and looked to the Jonin for their opinion. You're right, he is different, said Asuma, the Sandaime's son. They'd only observed Naruto's training, and hadn't observed much of his personality, yet. You said that he got a perfect score on every test without any apparent effort? Not that any of them were surprised after seeing him train. That is what Irika's report said, agreed Hiruzen. Given what little he told me when he returned, I can't say I'm surprised. How will the villagers react to this, though? Questioned Kurenai. I know that everyone has displayed different attitudes, but are we sure no one's going to give us trouble? We'll deal with that when the time comes, said Hiruzen, turning his attention to Konoha's top Jonin. Kakashi? He's intriguing, if nothing else, said Kakashi, stepping forward and eyeing the image in the crystal ball more closely as Naruto ate lunch and talked with his teammates. And you said he's now aware of the Kyuubi? Hiruzen nodded. That's correct, he said. I've spoken with the council. It seems they were hoping you'd take charge of Uchiha Sasuke. However, I've decided it would be best for you to choose which you wish to teach, the 7th graduate squad or the 10th. It's your decision, Kakashi. Kakashi was silent in response to that. A part of him really wanted to train Sasuke. After all, he owed a great deal to Obito, a deceased relative of Sasuke and Kakashi's closest friend in his youth despite the frequent conflict between them. But ultimately Kakashi felt he owed Naruto and the boy's father far more than he owed Obito. Besides, he'd made mistakes in his past regarding Naruto. It was past time he tried to make up for some of them. I don't care what anyone has to say, said Kakashi. I will take the 7th graduate squad. After lunch, Team 7 returned to the classroom to wait for their sensei. As others filed back in, Naruto stood up and approached Team 10 to challenge Shikamaru to a game of shogi, which was promptly accepted by the lazy genius. Sakura could not deny that she was amazed, as was everyone else watching. The Naruto she'd once known was good at thinking on his feet, and very impulsive. The blonde playing shogi with Shikamaru now, however, most definitely was not. He was calm, cool, and calculating, but in a way distinctly different from Sasuke's angst that made him undeniably attractive. Try as she might to deny it, Sakura couldn't help but feel like she was quickly developing a crush on the handsome blonde. It probably didn't help that she found the pink fox on his cloak somewhat flattering. The game of shogi also amazed Choji. The Akimichi found himself bewildered to see that Naruto was not only matching Shikamaru, but also actually pushing the Nara genius back at times. The game also served as a tribute to the tremendous patience Naruto had built up, as it took an average of 5 to 10 minutes for each player to take his turn, and it wasn't exactly uncommon to see one or both of them take even longer than that. This quickly drew the attention of others in the class as well. Naruto, since when have you been any good at shogi? Asked Kiba, voicing the question that was on everyone's minds, with the exception of Shikamaru, who was focusing on the game. In response to the question, Naruto shrugged slightly as he watched Shikamaru intently. One of the activities I had to pursue while I was away was sharpening my mind, said Naruto, motioning to the board slightly. Shogi was excellent not only for that particular task, but also for teaching me patience. Being impatient and rushing into things is a surefire way to get yourself and your teammates killed. At that moment, Shikamaru made his move, taking one of Naruto's silver generals with his knight. Naruto, who'd already considered that particular move, quickly responded by sending his rook charging forward recklessly, only to stop just outside the range of Shikamaru's remaining gold general, putting in a position to take several of the Naruto's pieces. Of course, being able to think quickly is also important on a real battlefield, when your enemies aren't gonna sit around while you form strategies. I'll keep that in mind, said Shikamaru, considering the changes on the board. Several hours later, Team 7 was the only one left waiting for their sensei, and had been that way for over an hour. When Sarutobi Asuma came in to pick up Team 10, Naruto and Shikamaru had somewhat reluctantly ended the game in a draw. Now, as they waited for their apparently tardy sensei, Sakura turned her thoughts to the game of shogi that had been played. While Naruto and Shino didn't seem to particularly mind the wait, Sakura lacked the patience of her teammates, and was starting to get restless. The game of shogi had gone a whole lot of nowhere. Sometimes, Shikamaru would push back against Naruto's forces, and sometimes it was Naruto doing the pushing, but the ultimate result was that the field was still even, and the game could have easily gone to either of them when it ended. Whenever one of them made a mistake, the other would promptly punish them for it. Shikamaru took his moves a little faster than Naruto most of the time, but Naruto still matched the Nara's brilliance, and sometimes made lightning-quick and foolish moves to catch his opponent off guard, buying time to form additional strategies of his own. While it had been fascinating to watch, it also grew rather repetitive after a while, and the Rosette's thoughts soon turned away from thinking of the game that had been played. Where is our sensei? Moaned Sakura. He's late. I thought ninja were supposed to always be on time. He might be testing our patience, Sakura-san, said Naruto calmly. I guess. A few minutes later, the door of the classroom slid open. All 3 members of Team 7 turned to face the door as a head of silver hair was poked through, a single eye looking over them lazily, his other eye covered by his pulled-down hitate and the lower half of his face covered by a mask of black cloth. Murmured the Cyclopean Jonin. It was difficult to get a reasonable first impression with this group. Sorry to be late, he chuckled weakly. Well, I got a little lost. Anyways, meet me on the roof. With that, he disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Suddenly, Naruto started chuckling, drawing the attention of his 2 teammates. Naruto-kun? It's nothing, he said, shaking his head and standing up as he put his straw hat back on. I just never thought we'd have the copy nin as our teacher. Copy nin? Asked Sakura. Shino, however, had heard of the Sharingan wielder, and understood what Naruto was talking about. The bug user was intrigued. He'd expected the copy nin to be assigned to teach the Uchiha, though he supposed he should have realized his team had received Kakashi when it was Sarutobi Asuma who picked up Team 10. Standing up, Sakura and Shino followed Naruto up to the roof, where their sensei was waiting for them. "Ah, you're here," said Kakashi. "Oh, and may I say that your current attire is much more appropriate than when I last saw you a few years ago?" Kakashi smiled while Naruto smirked. "Well, anything's better than being a big orange bullseye, right?" Kakashi chuckled as the genin sat down in front of him. "Alright then, if we're going to be a team, I think it's best that we introduce ourselves," said Kakashi. "Well, what do you want to know?" asked Naruto. Oh, simple stuff really," he said. "Likes, dislikes, hobbies, dreams for the future." "Why don't you go first, sensei?" said Sakura. "Oh, me? Well, my name is Hataki Kakashi," he said. "I have no desire to tell you my likes and dislikes, dreams for the future, and I have a lot of hobbies." "So all he told us is his name?" muttered Sakura. "Alright, let's start with you on the left," said Kakashi, pointing to Sakura. "Me? Well," started Sakura. "My name is Haruno Sakura. My likes are I guess books. My dislikes Enopig and this big forehead of mine." Here Naruto muttered that he thought her forehead was cute, but only Kakashi heard him. "I, never really thought about any reasonable dreams for the future." "Well, I suppose we'll leave it at that," said Kakashi. "Next." "My name is Abdurrahim Shino," said the bug user. "My likes are bugs. My primary dislikes would be noise and killing bugs. My hobbies are collecting bugs and studying the techniques of my clan. I have no real dream beyond becoming a good leader for my clan and protector of this village." Fair enough," said Kakashi with a slight smile as Sakura repressed a shudder. She never could get used to Shino and his bugs, but she'd have to, now that she was on a team with him. "And last will be you on the right." Naruto grinned lightly. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto," he said. "My likes are ramen, books, and bunshinjutsu." This surprised all three of the blonde's companions, since he'd been such a blockhead only 2 years ago. "My dislikes people who can't let go of the past and people who hate others without reason, for things outside their control." Kakashi nodded, thinking of the QB. "As for hobbies, well, I train and study a lot, but recreationally, I'd probably have to say pranks. As for my dream," Naruto smiled, adjusting his hitite, "I want to become Hokage and protect the people of this village from whatever may try to harm them." Kakashi's visible eye widened in surprise, but his surprise soon melted into a broad smile, though it was hidden beneath his mask. "That's an ambitious sort of dream," he said. "But with your attitude, well, maybe you'll surprise us. Now then, I'd like you all to meet me at Training Ground 7 for survival training." "Sensei, why survival training?" asked Sakura. "We've done plenty of that in the academy." Naruto couldn't help but suppress a snort. "Sakura-san, while I was out, I learned a lot," said Naruto. "Remember what Iruka-sensei said, the trials of the academy are things that true ninja could do in their sleep." "That's right," said Kakashi. "Becoming a ninja has several steps. The first is learning the most basic of the basics at the academy. Once you've passed the academy graduation exam, you are tested in what I like to think of as the true graduation exam." "What?" gasped Sakura as Naruto and Shino remained silent and impassive. "By passing the academy test, you've proven that you grasp the most basic of shinobi skills," explained Kakashi. "Now we'll be testing them under more realistic conditions. The survival exercise has a failure rate of 66%, meaning no more than 9, maybe 12, of the genin who graduated will pass, and perhaps not even that many. Those who fail will either go back to the academy or be removed from the shinobi program entirely." Sakura froze at this, completely caught off guard as her teammates calmly nodded in understanding. "So, be up bright and early for the exam, 7 o'clock sharp," said Kakashi. "I'll be your opponent. Bring all your gear. Oh, and I advise you not to eat breakfast. You might throw up." With that, Kakashi vanished. "Throw up?" muttered Naruto. "Come on, if we had stomachs that weak, we'd have no right to be ninja." Naruto stood up, looking at the other two as they also stood, Shino impassive and Sakura nervous. Well, it wasn't in order anyways. Might as well have something to eat. Better to have as much energy as we can, especially if Kakashi-sensei is really going to be our opponent in the exam. "Agreed, Naruto-san," said Shino. "Yeah, I guess you're right," said Sakura, her nervousness melting when Naruto looked at her with concern ever so slightly tinting his eyes. Sakura felt herself nearly melt when those gorgeous, shining sapphire blue eyes locked with her own eyes, only one thought going through her mind. It should be illegal to have eyes that beautiful. "I'm home," called Sakura, stepping through the door of her house. "Welcome home, Sakura," replied her mother, Harino Yuko, smiling at her daughter as she stepped out of the kitchen. How did team assignments go? Pretty good, actually, said Sakura, smiling lightly. I'm on a team with Aburaim Shino and Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto, huh? Whispered Yuko with a slight frown. Guilt flashed briefly through her mind, but she quickly dispelled it. No need to get Sakura involved in that subject. That's good then. He's a wonderful person. Sakura was silent, watching her mom as she returned to the kitchen. There had been a time, only 2 years ago, when Yuko had hated Naruto with a passion just like everybody else in the village, and had won Sakura away from him even before he became a prankster. A part of her had always wondered why. It couldn't be that her mom had known what a loser he'd become. First of all, he only started behaving the way he had because of how he was treated. Sakura had realized that much. Second, Naruto was now the strongest of the rookie genin, surpassing everyone, even Sasuke, on all fronts. Even discarding his abilities, he was quite a catch as far as eye candy went. Silently, she marveled how 2 years of absence had changed people's opinions of the blonde. And? What about your sensei? Asked Yuko as Sakura stepped into the kitchen and sat down at the table. We got Hatake Kakashi, said Sakura. I don't know much about him, but Naruto called him the copy ninja, and it seems that he's supposed to be really strong. The next morning, 3 12-year-old genin approached Training Ground 7 from different directions, each wide awake, alert and ready. They arrived precisely on time, even though they knew their sensei would likely be 2 or 3 hours later. This was not without reason though. In fact, they'd agreed that it would provide them with a good chance to discuss what they were up against. Morning Naruto-kun, Shino-san, said Sakura. Good morning, Sakura-san, Shino-san, replied Naruto. Shino merely nodded in response as the three sat down under the shade of a tree. I brought along some bentos to tide us over while we wait. With a Jonin opponent, we're going to need all the energy we can get. Alright, but nothing that'll make me fat, said Sakura. Naruto chuckled. Sakura-san, dieting is for fangirls, not kunoichi, he said sternly. Unless you're slacking off or eating nothing but fattening foods, the only weight you'll put on is muscle, which is a good thing. Naruto winced slightly, thinking of the heavy blows delivered by a certain S-class kunoichi criminal, but quickly shook it off. Anyways, you said Kakashi-sensei would be late today as well, said Sakura, changing the subject. But to come on time so we could discuss what we know of him. So, since I wasn't helping, what did you two find out? After Kakashi had left them on the roof of the academy yesterday, Naruto had suggested they do a little scouting, and Shino had immediately agreed. Information was a shinobi's greatest weapon, ignorance their greatest weakness. Therefore, they had to learn all they could about Kakashi before their exam. Sakura had admitted to a lack of any notable skills outside the academic area, something that had shamed her, but Naruto had reassured her that it would be fine as long as they could pass the test. With all that out of the way, Naruto created several shadow clones, onto which Shino placed his Kikeichu insects. The clones transported the insects in pursuit of Kakashi. When they found him, the shadow clones would conceal themselves and continue to tail them, while the Kikai attached to his clothes in various areas. Later that night, the Kikai returned to Shino while the shadow clones dispelled themselves. Naruto then sent new clones to tell his teammates to arrive on time, giving them plenty of time to discuss strategy. Kakashi-san is an interesting one, said Shino, refusing to refer to him as their sensei until they passed the test. Judging from what was overheard, he is perpetually late to everything, which is why we arrived on time rather than early. He is also a strong believer in teamwork, which it seems is connected to a friend who died when he failed on that account. Naruto nodded, impressed that Shino had gotten that piece of information. His shadow clones hadn't been able to get close enough, though he had observed a few other things. He does have one notable weakness we can probably exploit, said Naruto. He's a pervert. What? You heard me, Sakura-san, said Naruto as the rosette started to seethe. He's a lazy pervert who goes around almost everywhere reading a book from the Aika Paradise series. Why that no good? Calm down, Sakura-san, said Shino. I'm sure Naruto-san has come up with a method of turning this against Kakashi-san. Several, actually, said Naruto. I also went to Hokage-sama. He wouldn't tell me much, as was to be expected, but I convinced him to lend me this. With that, Naruto produced a copy of the first volume of Aika Paradise, a special edition copy, and author-signed, no less. It's a gift he was planning to give to Kakashi-sensei. I'm sure he'll be very displeased to see what we might do to his precious book to be. Sakura and Shino blinked. Then blinked again. Then blinked a third time. Naruto-kun, that's brilliant! Cried Sakura, jumping on Naruto and squeezing him into a tight hug. Naruto gasped for breath. Damn, that girl had strong arms when she really wanted to. Sakura-san, you may want to release Naruto-san, said Shino dryly a moment later. I don't think he can breathe. Huh? Oh. Sorry, Naruto-kun, said Sakura, letting go of the blonde and bowing to him. It's fine, said Naruto, waving it off mildly. However, internally, despite the near suffocation, he was dancing for joy. Sakura had hugged him. We'll need more than that to defeat a Jonin, commented Shino. Anything else up your sleeve? I always have something, usually several dozen somethings, up my sleeve, answered Naruto with an almost feral grin. First, I can provide us with whatever weapon we need. Because of my large chakra reserves, I can produce literally thousands of shadow clones without exhausting myself. Those shadow clones can then become any tool we need them to be. They can also distract Kakashi-sensei, providing us additional time to formulate strategies. That's a good idea, said Sakura thoughtfully. Okay, we're limited in what we can do without knowing what test we'll be facing, but we can go ahead and get ourselves set up. Naruto, how long can you maintain your shadow clones for? It depends on how many I create, said Naruto. The fewer I make, the longer they can be maintained. But I can maintain as many as 1,000 for several hours, though they only take 1 or 2 hits before they pop. That should be fine, said Sakura, nodding. Alright, so, here's my setup plan. Yo! You're late. Sorry, said Kakashi. I got lost on the road of life. Cut the bullcrap, Kakashi-sensei. I've already figured out that you're going to be late for everything, said Naruto, lazily staring up at the clouds in a manner reminiscent of a certain lazy Nara genius. Oh? Then why were you here early? Asked Kakashi, raising a hidden eyebrow. Because I get a better view of the clouds here than at my apartment. Well, in that case, said Kakashi, putting the timer he was carrying down on one of the log posts, along with 2 bento boxes. His eye narrowed suspiciously when he heard the distinct lack of grumbling stomachs. I thought I said not to eat. Sakura shrugged. It wasn't an order, she said. It also occurred to us that if you're our opponent in the exam, we'd need all the energy we could, added Shino. Also, I brought along a little extra to account for the weight, said Naruto, pointing to 3 empty bento boxes sitting on a rock next to the base of a tree as he pulled himself up. Kakashi stared at the rock for a moment, confused. He didn't remember it being there, but he shook it off. He probably just never bothered to notice it. It wasn't like he'd memorized every aspect of this training ground. Well, I have to say, that was a good decision on your part, said Kakashi, setting the timer for noon. Then, he held up 2 bells. Now then, here's the test. I'm going to tie these 2 bells to my belt. Your goal is to take one from me. When the timer goes off, anyone without a bell gets tied to a post and must then watch as I eat their lunch right in front of them. The 3 shared a quick glance that didn't go unnoticed by the Jonin. You only need to get 1 bell, but anyone who doesn't have a bell fails by default. In other words, at least one of you is going to fail no matter what you do. The eyes of all 3 genin narrowed ever so slightly. You can use whatever tools you want, continued Kakashi. You won't succeed unless you come at me with the intent to kill. Not so sure about that, said Naruto, grinning. I've sparred with tougher opponents than you. Oh? Then let's see you prove it, said Kakashi, tying the bells to his belt. Is everyone ready? When he received 3 confirming nods, he continued. Begin. In the next instant, all 3 genin disappeared. Kakashi blinked. There was no way all 3 of them were that fast, was there? There's something wrong with this whole test, said Sakura after Naruto informed her of what his shadow clones had gathered. Agreed, said Shino. I've never heard of anything but 3-man teams of genin. Never a 2-man team, and one wouldn't even be a team. Yeah, said Naruto. And remember what Kakashi-sensei said yesterday? He specifically stated that only 9 or 12 candidates would pass. In other words, they have to pass or fail as a team. So the bells must be to make us turn on one another, said Sakura in sudden understanding. Of course, muttered Naruto. There's no way an average genin could get the bell on their own. 2 genin couldn't either. It would take all 3 to get it, unless one of them was particularly exceptional. Sasuke or I could probably get the bell on our own, but it would be difficult. The problem is that we're the exception, not the rule. Given what we know about Kakashi-sensei, this isn't a test of ability, but a test of teamwork. So it's a good thing we set up like we did, said Sakura. Naruto nodded. Kakashi's engaging one of the clones, he said, receiving information from one of the many clones he'd scattered and disguised all over the training ground. Alright, he'll almost certainly drag this out to the bitter end. The clone is Sakura's, so it's using the basic academy taijutsu, no offense. None taken. Anyways, he's pulled out his Ika Paradise book, continued Naruto. This'll be our chance. We need to think quickly, before Kakashi-sensei catches on to our little game. Kakashi sighed as Naruto emerged and came at him, allowing Sakura to retreat. His eyes narrowed as Naruto threw his punches recklessly, switching from the precision grace of his Juken-based taijutsu to the reckless brawling of a street fighter. What was he up to? Naruto lashed out with a kick that Kakashi easily dodged, seeming to vanish as he appeared behind Naruto. A shinobi isn't supposed to get caught from behind, idiot, said Kakashi, not hiding his disappointment in the least as he formed the tiger seal. Senin Goroshi. With that, Kakashi jabbed his fingers forward, but in the next instant, an explosion knocked him back before he'd even made contact with Naruto, sending Kakashi flying across the training grounds. What was that? Thought Kakashi, bouncing to his feet, only to realize that he was restrained by several Narutos hanging onto him. He's using Kage Bunshin? In front of Kakashi stood his 3 students, all looking distinctly smug. Suddenly, in a puff of smoke, Shino and Sakura transformed into Naruto, and Kakashi's eye narrowed. Where are the others? He asked casually. The Naruto in the middle smirked. Oh, we figured I'd be enough, so they're off enjoying themselves, he said casually. We'll figure out the bell thing later. Kakashi's eye narrowed further at the obvious lie. Naruto was taunting him. As Naruto charged in, he delivered another punch with that brawling Street Fighter style, only for Kakashi to transform into a clone that promptly disappeared. However, as the explosive tags Kakashi dropped went off, Naruto continued to smirk. Hidden in the trees, Kakashi let out another disappointed sigh. Naruto was clearly overconfident. But that confidence wasn't entirely misplaced. Kakashi replaced his book in his kunai pouch, deciding it was time to take this a little more seriously. It seems like I've been dealing with Naruto ever since I told them to begin, he said. I think I'll go find Sakura. With that, the silver-haired Jonin vanished. Phase 1 complete, said Naruto, locking eyes with the other 2 as he placed the book he'd been casually looking over as he waded into his kunai pouch. Now for Phase 2. Got it, said Sakura, running out of the hidden clearing. Naruto looked at his last teammate, and the 2 shared a nod before leaving themselves, in a different direction from Sakura. About 15 minutes later, a scream split the air, and a certain pink-haired kunoichi fainted, collapsing spread-eagled on the ground, foaming at the mouth. Maybe I overdid it? Thought Kakashi, staring at Sakura's unconscious form after being victimized by genjutsu. Oh well, no harm done in the long run. Kakashi leapt backwards through the trees and set off to find Aburame Shino. It didn't take him long. Shino was standing in a clearing, hands in the pockets of his overcoat, calmly waiting for Kakashi. The silver-haired Jonin chuckled slightly. Compared to the others, you're a strange one, he said mirthfully. Since I doubt you've ever fought an Aburame, said Shino, raising his arms as Kikai insects swarmed out from them. I doubt you've ever faced an opponent quite like me. With that, Shino threw several shuriken Kakashi's way, accompanied by several more which were clearly composed of the Kikai swarming from his sleeves. Kakashi evaded, but the Kikai suddenly turned, back on course with Kakashi. The Jonin's eye narrowed as he used Kawarimi no Jutsu to escape. Shino, evidently, anticipated where he'd moved to, though, and was already surging towards Kakashi, moving with surprising speed and grace. Kakashi's visible eye narrowed as he began to piece together the truth of the matter. Team 7 outclassed all of the other genin teams this year. Naruto, of course, had easily outclassed all of the other genin, and from the reports, he hadn't even been trying. Shino, on the other hand, performed well, but was nothing that really stood out. However, Kakashi now realized that he was probably stronger than Sasuke, which would make him the second best of his year. Shino understood the importance of deception to the shinobi. This made Sakura the weak link in the group, but even though her only strength was book smarts, she had a lot of potential and room to grow. Actually, I find myself really hoping they will pass, thought Kakashi as he continued to trade blows with Shino, occasionally evading the Kikai insects, which he knew were extraordinarily dangerous. Shino threw a punch, which Kakashi evaded, then dropped down low, aiming to kick Kakashi's feet out from under him. Kakashi leapt up into the air. That was when Shino struck, his hands lashing out towards the bells, along with the Kikaichu. Kakashi's eyes widened. Damn it, this kid was better than he thought. Again, Kakashi transformed into a log as he used the substitution technique to make his getaway. Behind his glasses, Shino's eyes darted about, trying to find the Jonin. Below. cried Kakashi's voice as a hand gripped Shino's legs. Before he could react, the bug user was pulled down and buried to his neck. Doton, Shinjuzanju no Jutsu, said Kakashi, kneeling in front of Shino with a smirk that was evident even beneath his mask. Well, you're not half bad. Too bad that's still bad enough. Kakashi laughed lightly at the horrible, horrible line as he walked away. When he was out of sight, Shino smirked before breaking down into a swarm of Kikeichu that promptly returned to the host. Everything is in place, said Shino as the Kikeichu landed on his fingers. Sakura shivered, watching those bugs slip into his clothes, knowing they were living throughout his body. At least he had the courtesy to keep it relatively hidden. Alright, then I guess it's time for Phase 3, said Naruto, standing up and heading back to the clearing where it all began. Naruto, said Kakashi mildly when the blonde appeared, just as he was about to pull his book back out to continue reading. Are you really going for the bells this time, rather than sending your clones after me? Yeah, I figured it was time I took this seriously as well, said Naruto. Kakashi nodded as Naruto slipped into that Juken style. He'd have to ask Naruto what the name for it was later. Suddenly, Naruto shot forward, so fast Kakashi barely raised his guard in time. What the hell? Was this Naruto's true speed? Kakashi ducked under one strike, then retaliated with a punch of his own, but Naruto twisted out of the way. Kakashi's eye narrowed. He'd have to take this a touch more seriously himself. Kakashi leapt back, hands running through seals with blinding speed, ending on the tiger seal. Katon, Gokakyu no Jutsu. At that instant, Kakashi spat a giant fireball Naruto's way, engulfing the cloaked genin in flame. Kakashi landed, worried that he might have actually hit the boy. But when the fireball cleared, there was nothing. Gokakyu no Jutsu? You are taking this seriously, came Naruto's voice. Kakashi ducked, just as Naruto delivered a strike where the Jonin's neck had been an instant earlier. Was that a shadow clone I hit? No, I'm certain it wasn't. He must have used Kawarimi no Jutsu to escape. This taijutsu style, his speed, his escape, the number of clones he produced and the fine chakra control for that training I observed, there's no doubt about it. Naruto is at least a chunin in terms of abilities. He's incredible. Kakashi continued to dodge Naruto's strikes to the best of his abilities, but it was proving more difficult than he'd expected. He deflected one or two blows, and his eye widened at the sheer force behind them. It's not just speed, but strength too, and he's only 12 years old. Who the hell could have turned this boy from a dead last into this in only 2 years? Bringing his speed up another level, Kakashi dodged one blow, then lashed out with a kick that Naruto couldn't block or dodge. But when the blow connected, Naruto vanished in a puff of smoke. A shadow clone? Then I've really been fighting nothing but clones this whole time? Kakashi landed on his feet near the pond, one hand rising almost instinctively to his hitait. Was Naruto really going to make him use that? At that moment, dozens of Narutos exploded from all around Kakashi, charging him all at once. Oh fuck that. When they reached Kakashi, the Jonin made a quick getaway with Kawarimi no Jutsu, leaving a few dozen explosive tags attached to the log, wiping out all of the shadow clones. Kakashi reappeared next to the posts, and it was then that an odd thought occurred to him. He glanced over at the timer to see that it was still more than 2 hours from going off. But he knew they'd been at it for at least 2 hours. He chuckled. Very clever, he said. You broke the timer. Actually, Sensei, said a soft voice next to Kakashi's ear as he suddenly felt a lot of added weight and a kunai pressed to his neck. We replaced it with a shadow clone. Before Kakashi could react, he felt his chakra drain away rapidly, and nearly collapsed to the ground at the sudden loss. Kikeichu swarmed off of Kakashi's body and onto the body of Aburain Shino as the bug user and both his teammates stepped into Kakashi's view. Each of them was holding a jingling bell. Kakashi chuckled as the Naruto on his back vanished in a puff of smoke, along with the timer, the rock on which the eaten bentos had been placed, several animals in the area, and a broken tree branch here and there. So, care to tell me what happened and where the extra bell came from? He said, checking his belt to confirm what he already knew. The bells were gone. The extra bell was my doing, said Naruto. I sent a shadow clone off to buy one that would be indistinguishable from the ones you had. Clever, but the ones I had are very old. That's why we beat all 3 of them up a little more, and wore the new one down using jutsu, said Sakura, smiling as she jingled her bell slightly. So what's to stop me from failing all 3 of you for this bit of treachery? Deceit is part of the art of the shinobi, Kakashi-sensei, said Shino, confident that they passed. Never underestimate your opponent, no matter how small they may seem. Naruto-san and I scouted out information on you yesterday, and we used that to our advantage here, coming early to discuss strategy as we waited for you. You've been caught in a giant illusion from the moment you stepped onto the field, added Naruto. When you got here, we'd already left and found a place to hide in the little forest we've got here. Meanwhile, I left behind 3 shadow clones, 2 of which used Henji no Jutsu to disguise themselves as Sakura-san and Shino-san. Sakura nodded. Naruto-kun also left a bunch of other shadow clones scattered about the training ground under various disguises, from rocks to animals, she said, picking up Naruto's explanation. While you gave your explanation to the clones, Naruto already had you surrounded, and Shino-san had littered the field with his bugs. When your explanation was given, the 3 shadow clones hid themselves, while another disguised in the tree dispelled itself, telling Naruto-san what the test was, said Shino, continuing for Sakura. This allowed us to discuss the test without you being aware we were communicating at all. We also realized that there weren't any 2-man teams, said Sakura. And you said yesterday that only 9 or 12 genin would be passing, in other words 3 or 4 teams of 3 people each, meaning we had to pass or fail as a team. After that we devised our plan of attack, said Naruto. Once we'd decided what to do, I created another shadow clone, then dispelled it. Since the new clone was aware of our strategies and the other clones weren't, this allowed me to instantly inform our army of what was going on. After that, they launched their attack, said Shino. The goal, however, was not to get the bells, but rather, to drop the Kikachu I'd left with the clones onto your body while you were distracted with fending off Naruto-san. Along with the Kikachu, a shadow clone that was disguised as one hit on your back. When you dealt with the first wave, we continued on to the next phase, said Sakura. When you tried to put me in a genjutsu, you actually got a clone that was disguised as me and was apparently a pretty good actor. Once you let your guard down, I put my own minor genjutsu on you to disguise the sound of the real bells and create an illusionary sound in its place. I was watching you from then on, making sure the false noises were made at the appropriate time. While Sakura-san was luring you away, Naruto-san and I dealt with the alarm in case it took longer than expected and put the final phases of our plan into motion, continued Shino. I created a Kikai Bunshin to confront you and placed several Kikachu on the bells. Then, Naruto-san confronted you once we had confirmation that all the pieces were in place. Those weren't shadow clones, Kakashi-sensei, said the blonde in question. That was the real deal, but whenever a blow threatened to hit me, I used Kawarimi no Jutsu to switch places with one of the clones. Your arrival by the pond was the cue for my clones to attack en masse. While you were by the pond, Shino-san's bugs cut the bells loose, said Sakura. My chakra reserves are low, so I was able to get close without being noticed. Naruto-kun taught me Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu while we were waiting for you, since I didn't have any solid clone techniques. I just created one next to you while you were focused on the clones, had it grab the bells, and tossed them to the other side, where I was waiting. To finish our grand illusion, the Kikachu on your body drained your chakra while the shadow clone moved in for the kill, said Shino. And that about sums it all up, said Naruto, smirking. Kakashi was gobsmacked. He'd just been completely outwitted by a bunch of wet behind theirs genin. No, outwitted didn't even scratch the surface. He'd underestimated them, and badly, and now, he'd been effectively humiliated. And not only had they devised this enormous illusion into which he'd been trapped, but Sakura had learned to perform Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu in less than 2 hours. Oh right, I forgot one more thing. Kakashi turned almost uncertainly to the blonde, only to see him holding up a suspiciously familiar orange book. Kakashi blanched and reached into his kunai pack, pulling out his copy of Ika Ika Paradise. But an instant later, that copy disappeared in a puff of smoke. When the clones were putting Kikachu on you, I had one disguise itself as your book and swap places with it using Kawarimi no Jutsu, said Naruto, grinning almost maniacally. Now you can either pass us, or I'll destroy the book, along with that special, author-signed first edition the Sandaime was planning to give you. Kakashi blanched even more visibly before sagging. All right, he said. Congratulations. You all pass. The Jonin sighed as his book was tossed back to him. Then, he chuckled. You know, I think you're the first people to ever see through this test, said Kakashi, scratching his chin thoughtfully. It was first employed by the Shodaime and Nidaime Hokage to test a team of new genin. That team consisted of the Sandaime Hokage to be and his 2 advisors. Sandaime-sama then used it to test the students who would become known as the Densetsu no Sannin. Jiraiya-sama would later use it to test his own students, who included Namake's Minato, the greatest hero in Konoha's history. Before he became the Yandaime Hokage, Minato-sensei was assigned a team that he tested in the same way mine. Kakashi sighed, straightening up. But no team ever saw through the entire test from the start, he said. I believe Minato-sensei probably figured it out, but that was partway through the test, too late to salvage the situation, and it was a mistake he never made again. I can see a bright future for all three of you. Kakashi then walked past them, motioning them to follow as he stepped up to the memorial stone. He kneeled down before it, placing a hand gently on the stone. Look at this, he said. The numerous names carved on this stone. These are ninjas who are recognized as heroes of this village, ones who gave their lives in the line of duty. It's a memorial my best friend, my teammate, and my sensei. All their names are carved on here. Kakashi straightened and turned to his students. I want you to remember that. I once made the mistake of placing my duties over my comrades. That is how my best friend died. I realized what a stupid idiot I was too late, and because of that mistake, he died saving my life. Kakashi's hand continued to rest on the memorial. I want you to remember this lesson, above and beyond all others, because it is the road that all ninja of Konoha no Sato should follow, a road of true power, the road that is the will of fire. In the ninja world, those who break the rules are scum, said Kakashi. But those who abandon their friends are worse than scum. I learned that lesson the day my friend died, and it is in understanding that lesson that I have truly grasped what it means to be a ninja of this village. I want you all to remember that. Don't worry, Kakashi-sensei, said Naruto, conviction thick in his voice. I swear to you, I won't forget. I won't either, said Sakura. I too shall remember this lesson, said Shino. Good, said Kakashi. Then meet on the bridge near the entrance to the training grounds tomorrow. We'll start missions then, and afterwards, we'll focus on your training. The Sandaime raised an eyebrow in surprise when Kakashi appeared in his office shortly after noon. The only other occupants of the room were Asuma and Kurenai, who'd passed their teams and were waiting to see who else passed. All the other Jonin had failed their own teams. You're early, Kakashi, said Hiruzen. What, did you decide to skip the makeup test? Actually, I'm here to report that Team 7 has passed with flying colors, said Kakashi, smiling. The others all stared at him incredulously. What? You actually passed the team? Said Asuma, sounding like he didn't believe it. He turned to Kurenai. All right, this is a very convincing genjutsu, but you can drop it now. It's not a genjutsu, said Kurenai, sounding annoyed. Let me put it another way, said Kakashi with a small sigh. I will be extremely proud to say that I got to teach Aburame Shino, Haruno Sakura, and Uzumaki Naruto. They never got to the second phase of the test. They completed crushed and steamrolled over the first test. They weren't fooled for a minute. Right from the off, they recognized the true purpose of the test, and that shouldn't come as a surprise. As far as the official results go, these three are the smartest genin in their year, and after seeing what they're capable of, I will gladly vouch for the authenticity of that statement. Really? Said Hiruzen with a raised brow. Care to tell me what, exactly, they did? Simple, said Kakashi. They trapped me in a grand and inescapable illusion, based on a critical and usually warranted mistake. I underestimated them, badly. They scouted information on me after the introduction yesterday. I'm sure you're aware of that. They knew I'd arrive late, but they still arrived at the appointed time, taking advantage of my absence to strategize. When I reached the training grounds, I found all three of them waiting. As it turned out, I actually found 3 shadow clones, 2 of them disguised, keeping their actual location a secret from me right from the start. So, Naruto truly has learned to take full advantage of Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, muttered the Sandaime. Continued Kakashi. Well, to keep a long story short, I spent almost the entire test facing clones, said Kakashi. I didn't see the real Naruto until he confronted me at the end of the test, and even then, he was simply pushing me to where Sakura was waiting to grab the bells that were cut free by Shino's Kikeichu. Earlier, when I thought I'd placed Sakura in a genjutsu, it turned out to be a clone, and instead, she used a minor genjutsu on me, silencing the real bells and creating a false sound in their place so I wouldn't notice when the bells were taken from me. And when it all came to an end, I found myself with the kunai of a shadow clone at my throat, a large portion of my chakra drained by the Kikeichu that had been dropped all over me, and all 3 of the real students standing in front of me each holding an identical bell. And my book. While Asuma and Kurenai stared at Kakashi, still incredulous, Hiruzen finally released the laughter that had been building. In other words, said Hiruzen, still chuckling, you were privately humiliated by a bunch of wet-behind-theirs genin. Yes, that about sums it up. You've got to be kidding, said Asuma, rubbing his temples. My team barely passed, and that was thanks to Shikamaru and Choji. I would have failed the Uchiha if it hadn't meant failing those 2 as well. The kid might have some hope, but his cocky attitude is maddening. Same here, said Kurenai. Kiba and Ino are both extremely brash, and Hinata doesn't have the confidence to do well without help. They only passed because both of them wanted to help Hinata. Hokage-sama, I thought we were trying to keep the teams balanced? When you consider Naruto, it becomes difficult to balance the teams, said the Hokage with all seriousness. When I was deciding on the teams, I considered the importance of balance, but soon realized that a lot of clan heirs were in the same general area. Shikamaru and Choji were near the bottom of the class, Sasuke and Shino were near the top, and Kiba, Hinata and Ino were about mid-level. After some consideration, I reorganized the original teams somewhat, foregoing balance for what I felt would work best. First, I knew that I would have to keep Sasuke away from a team with any girl other than Hinata. Second, I had to consider the senseis. Finally, I had to determine who would be able to work well together. Hiruzen leaned back in his chair slightly, chewing on the end of his pipe absent-mindedly. Following the first condition, a natural choice would be to put Sasuke on a team with Kiba and Hinata. And that would have worked, until you considered the second condition. A sensei that could meet their needs would not be able to meet Sasuke's, and vice versa. Discarding that, another possibility, in the quest of maintaining balance, would be to put Sasuke on a team with Shikamaru and Kiba, and put them under Kakashi's guidance. However, it was also important to watch the balance of the remaining teams. And you eventually reached this conclusion, said Asuma, nodding as he now understood his father's reasons. Hiruzen sighed, and gave a small nod. It does unbalance the teams, he admitted. Although Sasuke's overall score was greater than Shino's, I think we all understand which is the stronger ninja, and Naruto is easily far stronger, while Sakura was about the middle of the class, strong in academics, moderate in genjutsu and ninja tools, and weak in ninjutsu and taijutsu. However, even if we were to put Naruto on a team with the lowest scorers, the results would be the same, if less obvious. I see, said Kurenai. She shook her head. Things are going to get interesting, aren't they? Yes, said Hiruzen, grinning slightly. Things in the village of the Hidden Leaf are going to get very, very interesting, now that the Yandame's legacy has returned. So, Naruto-kun, you've spent the last 2 years training? Asked Sakura as the genin of Team 7 sat down at Ichiraku Ramen Bar, though Naruto had had a little difficulty convincing Sakura to indulge him. That's right, said Naruto. 1 bowl of shoyu ramen with extra vegetables, please. Coming right up, said Tuchi cheerfully. And how about you two? I'll have shoyu ramen please, said Sakura. The same as Sakura-san, added Shino. Not a problem. So, what did you learn? Said Sakura, continuing her earlier question. Hinata, Ino and I saw you training the day after graduation. That's weird, you'd think I'd have noticed that, said Naruto mildly. Well, for the most part, I was simply worked to death in chakra control exercises and academics. My sensei used an extremely potent training method revolving around Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. What sort of training? Asked Sakura, curious to know how shadow clones could have been that helpful in Naruto's training. Remember how I used them for scouting yesterday, and had them dispel themselves to quickly spread information? Sakura and Shino's eyes widened as both almost immediately grasped the implications. So you could have each clone study something different, and then it's like you're studying a whole bunch of things at once? Gasped Sakura as the ramen was put in front of the 3 genin. Exactly, said Naruto, breaking apart a pair of chopsticks. Itadakimasu. With that the 3 started eating. Sakura had heard rumors about Naruto's eating habits 2 years earlier from Irika, so she was actually rather pleased to discover that Naruto ate rather politely. How come nobody else uses this training method? Asked Sakura, pausing for a moment. Naruto also paused and gave a slight shrug. The truth is, most people can't, he said. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu is very draining on one's chakra reserves. I've always had very large reserves from a young age though, so it's easy for me. I actually had an easier time with the higher level clone techniques than with the basic Bunshin no Jutsu because the basic academy ninjutsu use almost no chakra at all. The larger your reserves, the harder it is to control your chakra, the more difficult jutsu become. In return though, you can generally perform many more jutsu than normal people. I see, said Sakura. It's a shame Shino-san and I can't train that way. Says who? Replied Naruto softly, drawing the attention of both his teammates. If we bring your reserves up to the point that you can produce shadow clones, you can use this training method. Maybe not as effectively as I can, but it would nevertheless speed your training up to at least twice the normal rate. Not only that, but the more you use shadow clones, the quicker your chakra reserves will grow, since merely producing them serves as a sort of training for your reserves. Furthermore, the younger you are, the less developed your chakra coils are, meaning the more strain and push you put on them from a young age, the more they'll grow. Eventually, chakra development will nearly flatline, but when you're young, it can grow very quickly, and if you keep at it, it'll be longer before the development degrades. You sure? Of course, Sakura-san, said Naruto, finishing up his ramen. Because of the shadow clones, I got at least 80 years worth of academic studies done. 80 years? Naruto chuckled, and even stoic Shino seemed amazed. I can produce and maintain 1,000 or more clones each day for over several hours, explained Naruto. Depending on what the clones are doing, sometimes even longer. That's amazing, said Sakura. Naruto smiled slightly. Well, if Kakashi-sensei agrees and you two get your reserves up enough to handle it, I'll teach you Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, said Naruto as he put some money on the counter, covering the cost of ramen for all three of them. Thank you for the meal, Tuchi-san, I-am-san. With that, Naruto stood up to leave. You're welcome, Naruto-kun, said I-am, smiling sweetly. Come back anytime. Naruto nodded and smiled while Sakura and Shino finished up thanked the Ikarakus for the meal themselves. I shall return home now, said Shino. Goodbye, Naruto-san, Sakura-san. I'll see you tomorrow. See you? With that, Shino left. Well, I'm gonna get in a bit more training and studying, said Naruto, walking towards the training ground he'd been using over the last week. Naruto-kun? Naruto paused, looking back at the uncertain Rosette. Yes, Sakura-san? Sakura blushed lightly, fidgeting somewhat uncomfortably. Can I come with you? Sakura felt her blush growing, but if Naruto noticed, he didn't say anything. Instead, the blonde simply smiled that brilliant smile of his as he gave a slight nod, and Sakura's blush deepened further. Of course, Sakura-san. Kakashi swarmed out from Shino's sleeves, flying straight at Kakashi. The Jonin flipped back, running through hand seals for a basic Katan Jutsu. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu! Cried Kakashi. At the same instant, there was an accompanying cry of Suiton, Suryuden no Jutsu. Kakashi had anticipated Naruto using the technique he'd been taught. The kid was a ninjutsu sponge, and was silent as the water dragon emerged from the pond to intercept his fireball before flying Kakashi's way. Moving quickly, Kakashi readied another jutsu for his defense. Doton, Doria Hiki! He cried, forming a rock wall in front of him from the ground, halting the water dragon. The sound of kunai and shuriken flying through the air alerted Kakashi to what was about to happen next, and the Jonin fled with Kawarimi no Jutsu as the bladed weapon struck. That was when the explosive tags went off. These weren't ordinary explosive tags either, but instead, custom ones that Sakura and Naruto had made together, and the force was enough to shatter Kakashi's rock wall. From his hiding place in a tree, Kakashi's eye widened. Weren't they taking this a little too seriously? It was Saturday, and the genin technically all had the day off, but Team 7 wasn't willing to let Kakashi off easy, demanding at least one spar for the day. Kakashi's danger sense went off, and he leapt from the tree just in time to avoid a Kage Bunshin dropping on top of him. These kids were dangerous. When Kakashi landed in the middle of the main clearing, he found himself surrounded by his three genin, who all charged him at once, Shino with his family taijutsu, Naruto and Sakura with the Muraken. Kakashi winced slightly as he ducked under one attack, only for Sakura to jab his arm with her fingers, accompanied by a release of chakra. The Muraken truly was a close mirror for the Juken. Although it was aimed at targeting nerve clusters to disable the opponent rather than cause internal injuries, the overall principles were the same, and the Muraken used small bursts of chakra to help it really get at the target. Naruto had been teaching the style to Sakura ever since they passed the bell test. And now, Kakashi's arm was slightly numbed. He could still use it, but it was clear that even that minor strike was hampering him. The three genin jumped back, and Naruto grinned at Kakashi. Boom, he said. Kakashi's eye widened, and he gathered a large degree of chakra in his feet, rocketing him upward as all three of his students, or, to be more precise, the three shadow clones that had swapped places with his students, exploded. While Kakashi was distracted with his escape, though, he failed to notice the kunai flying through the air overhead with small sacks attached to them. Additional, precisely aimed kunai cut the strings of the sack, releasing the small papers and Sakura petals within. Sakura Fubuki no Jutsu, called Sakura, throwing the final piece of her little technique. Kakashi paled, visible eye expanding so large that it seemed to have gone white as the exploding tag on the last kunai detonated, causing a chain reaction that detonated all of the smaller exploding tags floating in the air around him. Konoha's top jonin landed on the ground and rolled several feet, battered by the work of his three rookie genin. Had they pulled that maneuver on almost any ninja below jonin level, they most certainly would have killed the target. Alright, I think that's enough, called Kakashi. We keep going at this rate, and the three of you will kill me. There was some light chuckling as Naruto, Shino, and Sakura stepped forth from their hiding places and walked up to their sensei. Sorry about that, Kakashi-sensei, said Sakura. I just really wanted to test out the new toys. Kakashi blanched when she referred to them as toys. He'd hate to see what she'd consider a real weapon. You call that a toy? He muttered before shaking his head. Well, like I said, that's enough for today. Now I want you three to relax and enjoy yourselves. That's in order. Oh fine, said Naruto as Kakashi smirked at them and left. Naruto let out a small sigh, knowing his sensei would catch on immediately if he did try to train. Man, I had no idea the legendary copy Nin was such a pain to deal with. I know what you mean, said Sakura lightly. Shino began to walk away. I'm heading to the forest, he said. I'll see you at the next team meeting. See ya, Shino-san called Naruto before turning to his Rosette teammate. Well, we're being forced to take the day off. Anything you want to do? No, not really, admitted Sakura. Naruto was quiet for a moment before a grin split his face. In that case, how about helping with a little payback? Sakura looked at Naruto, not at all certain how to take his words. Kakashi hummed lightly as he walked down the streets of Konoha, his nose once again buried in a book of the Ika Ika series. However, only half of his mind was on the book in front of him. Because Naruto was so much more advanced than his teammates, Kakashi decided to start them on some of the basic exercises a little earlier than he'd originally intended. He'd planned to focus on teamwork first if they passed, but the ease with which they'd done so made it clear that they weren't lacking in that area. Therefore, while Shino and Sakura would practice chakra control, Kakashi sparred with Naruto and taught him a few jutsu, including the Suiton, Suryuden no Jutsu. To his surprise, though, Sakura already had tree walking down, having spent a week following graduation training her control with Hinata and Ino, but she couldn't last very long because of her low reserves. Because of that, Kakashi had started her on water walking, and then asked Naruto to create a shadow clone to train Sakura in the Muraken, which would be well suited to her, while she was practicing water walking. While it was clearly very challenging, Sakura seemed to really enjoy herself. Shino, on the other hand, had not done any of the chakra control exercises beforehand. Despite that, he'd made excellent progress, and would likely move on to your water walking himself by the next training session. Overall, Kakashi was extremely pleased with the quick progress made by his team. Kakashi! Came a familiar voice suddenly as Mato Gai, Kakashi's self-proclaimed eternal rival, appeared before the masked Jonin. I hear you have finally passed a most marvelous team of genin. The power of you. I wonder what jutsu I should teach Naruto next, thought Kakashi idly. Maybe I should test them for elemental affinities. Nah, I'll wait till we've been on a few C-rank missions, give them some field experience. Then there's Naruto's proposal for training with Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Do you say, Kakashi? Did you say something? Gai's face took on a look of despair as Kakashi stared at him in confusion. Gai started a rant on youth and Kakashi's coolness, prompting the Jonin to walk away from the not entirely there in the head taijutsu master. Kakashi arrived in front of his home a few minutes later to a curious sight. Why were so many of his copies of the Ika Ika series sitting on the ground, wrapped in explosive tags? Explosive tags? An explosion later, and Kakashi was lying flat on his back, a sheet of paper floating into his face. Before it landed, he managed to read what was written on it. Dear Kakashi-sensei, maybe now you'll be on time to team meetings. Sincerely, Uzumaki Naruto and Harino Sakura. Kakashi's next sentence was heard throughout Konoha. WHYYYYY. Elsewhere, Naruto and Sakura were both laughing without restraint as their sensei's cry of despair echoed throughout the village. You're right, Naruto-kun, said Sakura as tears formed in her eyes from laughing so hard. That was fun. Told you so, said Naruto, laughter dying down to a chuckle. Man, it's been so long since I pulled a prank, I forgot how much fun it could be. I don't like that look in your eyes. I wonder how everyone will take my next stunt. Naruto. No, I'm not asking you to help. I don't want you to get in trouble. Sakura sighed, giving up on trying to talk Naruto out of this. The two were quiet for a few moments, simply sitting, relaxing and enjoying each other's company. Hey, Sakura-san? Yes, Naruto-kun? She asked, turning to face his brilliant smile. Feeling her face heat up inexplicably, she thought about how much she hated the way his smile always made her blush. Now that Kakashi-sensei's been dealt with, let's get back to training. I also sent an invite to a few of the others to join us. Back with Kakashi, The weeping Jonin finally took notice of something else on the note that had been left for him. P.S. The Hokage left you that gift we were talking about during the survival test. We've got it right now. If you don't want us to burn it too, you'll pretend that we weren't training today against your orders. Kakashi sighed. I'm really starting to hate that kid. Training Ground 7 had changed from what it had originally been. Kakashi had apparently called in a favor, and had the terrain modified with a cliff, waterfall, taller trees, and a larger main clearing, reminiscent of where Naruto had spent his first week back training. It was here that Naruto, Sakura, and the people Naruto had invited joined them. This group consisted of Sasuke, Hinata, and Ino. Shikamaru had declined as it was too troublesome, Choji was getting an extra large lunch, and Kiba had apparently been too lazy. Shino had also declined, deciding to work on his own in the forest as he collected bugs. Sakura smiled as she saw Sasuke walk onto the field, but scowled when Ino joined them and let out a squeal before jumping on Sasuke's back. Uzumaki, you didn't tell me you'd invited a fangirl. Naruto chuckled. Don't worry, I'll solve your problem soon enough, he said mildly. Ino and Sakura both looked confused. So, you called a group training session? Asked Sasuke, smirking slightly. At the academy, he'd had no doubt that Naruto was stronger than him, but he was confident that if someone who'd once been a dead last could get this strong, he could become even stronger than that. In response to his question, Naruto nodded. One thing I learned long ago was the importance of working and training with others, said Naruto, as well as the importance of teamwork. Teamwork, in turn, is founded on understanding the abilities of your teammates, how your abilities measure against theirs in what areas, and how best you can complement one another. No ninja can become a jack of all trades without decades of experience, which is why teamwork is so important. There are some exceptions, I'm one, but to become an exception means you're generally going to need those decades of training in some areas. What makes you an exception? Asked Ino. Naruto shrugged. You remember how I was such a stamina freak years ago? He asked. When he received the affirming nods, he continued. Stamina is the foundation of your chakra reserves. The training I underwent over the last 2 years requires enormous stores of chakra. Only under certain circumstances, which must be applied early in one's life, can somebody have reserves like mine. There are some big prices to pay for such a gift though, and one of those is the curse that originally drove me from here. Everyone stared at Naruto curiously, but the blonde shook his head and grinned at them. Well, let's keep things simple, he said. I wonder how much the three of you have improved. Half an hour later saw all 4 of Naruto's training partners on the ground, handily defeated by the blonde prodigy. Well, that wasn't quite true. Sasuke and Ino had both been effortless, while Sakura provided some challenge with her training in the Muraken. Hinata had proven truly difficult though. While she was rather reluctant at the start, some encouragement from Naruto had gotten her into the spar, and while not a master of the Juken, she was nonetheless a skilled practitioner of the Taijutsu style, which was the best possible match for the Muraken and vice versa. You're good, admitted Sasuke from his place on the ground, waiting for the numbing effects of Naruto's strike to wear off. Naruto shrugged. The Muraken is nearly as potent a style as the Juken on which it's based, he said. Unlike most Taijutsu styles, it attacks the opponent in ways that the body can't be trained against. I can take a considerable beating, internally and externally, but that's because one of my gifts is accelerated healing, and because of my large chakra reserves and strong chakra coils, I'm naturally resistant to the Juken. However, I have no such natural defense against the Muraken, which doesn't aim to injure the body in any way. I can see the advantages in that, said Ino. Care to teach me? Now, Naruto looked slightly annoyed. Your family already has a taijutsu style intended to work with your mind-based jutsu, he said. You should learn that, instead of wasting time fangirling. Why you? Fangirls have no place in the real world, said Naruto. Maybe you don't grasp this, but you're weak. Any real genin could probably kill you as you are right now. All you have is the protection of your teammates to count on. But as important as teamwork is, individual abilities are important, so that you can pull your own weight. Do you understand? What are you, my sensei? Considering you gave me about as much challenge as I'd expect from a 6-year-old, yes. Now Ino was furious. Hinata wasn't certain how to react, while Sasuke and Sakura were amused. What would you know about all this? Demanded Ino. After seeing my sensei's slaughter legions of powerful shinobi over the course of 2 years, I'd say quite a bit, replied Naruto mildly. Silence filled the air. What did you say? Whispered Sakura, pulling herself up with what strength she could get into her numb body, the others doing the same, all staring at Naruto. The blonde sighed, waving it off. It's nothing, he said. I've seen the reality of what the shinobi world is like, and it's not pretty. Let's just leave it at that. Naruto's eyes focused on Ino. Sakura-san, Sasuke-san, and Hinata-san are all taking this seriously. It's time you did as well. Naruto drew a kunai and threw it so quickly no one could follow as it landed with a thunk a few inches from Ino's abdomen. Or you will get killed. Gulping slightly, Ino nodded in understanding as feeling continued to return to her body. Sasuke was surprised that Naruto seemed to have gotten the truth through his fellow blonde's thick skull. Sakura and Hinata were bewildered by Naruto's behavior, as both knew him to be exceedingly kind, yet he just treated Ino rather coldly. Although Naruto would never readily admit it, he hated what he'd just done. He cared a great deal for Ino. 2 years away in their position as Sasuke's top fangirls hadn't changed Naruto's feeling for either Sakura or Ino. It was for that same reason, though, that he had to drill this into her head even if meant acting coldly and making her hate him. Naruto sighed. Years ago, I'd have gloated over being able to beat all 4 of you so easily, he said. But I'm not the same idiot I was back then. 2 years of seeing the real world and having a proper education beat into me has had an overall positive effect on me. Naruto eyed all 4 of them. Titles, past achievements, clan names, it's all meaningless in the real world. These things will get you a moderate reputation, but that's all it is. You need the power, the skill, the intelligence, and the control to back up that reputation, or even exceed it. That's why I've never cared for such things. Sasuke wanted to bite back against Naruto, but really he couldn't. The blonde had gotten his point across. I feel like a teacher here, said Naruto with another sigh, scratching the side of his head idly. Really, it was no wonder they had to do all these deranked missions. It was to give the individual senseis time to teach their students 1-on-3 rather than 1-on-30 or more. How did you really get this strong? Questioned Sasuke. Naruto grinned. Well, besides the earlier given prerequisites, said Naruto. The most important part was my teachers. During your time at the academy, you've had one sensei training about 30 or more ninja at a time, and only in the basics. Even now, it's still primarily one sensei to 3 students. I had 2 senseis with no other students for the last 2 years, though, admittedly, they had plenty of other stuff to distract them. Who were they? Asked Sakura curiously. Naruto had talked about his senseis on several occasions, but he never said much about them. For the first time Sakura could remember, Naruto tensed. I can't say, replied the blonde after a moment. It's not my place. Sakura and Hinata both let it go. Ino was dying with curiosity, but kept her mouth shut. Sasuke was silent for a moment before speaking up. Why you? He asked, pulling himself to his feet as the Muraken wore off completely. Why did your senseis choose you? Naruto paused and thought for a moment. Why had Mai and Itachi chosen him? Was it because of the Kyuubi? No, they'd said the Kyuubi wasn't really significant to their choice. No, not their choice. Mai's choice. Naruto remembered when Itachi had told him that it was Mai who'd chosen to take him from the village and train him. But why him? They'd never explained that. After a moment, Naruto simply shrugged. I guess they thought I needed it the most, he said. I failed the graduation exam twice and was still at the bottom of class. Maybe they pitied me. That was a lie, and Naruto knew it. Fortunately, it was a lie that everyone bought. Well, in any case, let's continue, said Naruto, stretching slightly. Taijutsu is pretty much out for now, all right. We'll do this the way I was taught. Naruto grinned. You'd be amazed to find how effective a simple game of hide and seek promotes stealth and tracking skills. Let's get started. After that day, group training sessions became somewhat of a common practice, and every Saturday, Teams 7, 8, and 10, along with their instructors, gathered at Training Ground 7, where they made a point of seeing how they could help one another's students. Among them, though, Kakashi couldn't help but sigh in frustration. He'd worked with Sasuke on some light taijutsu practice and found the boy to be quite skilled in his clan's style. He was also able to use Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu twice without pushing himself too far, and was learning Katan, Hozenka no Jutsu. Kakashi had lent him a hand in that. Sadly, Sasuke was the only one whom Kakashi could really offer serious help to. Asuma, on the other hand, found himself thriving on working with Naruto and Shino. Although Naruto was very good with thrown weapons, he was only average with using them in close combat, and while Shino preferred to use his bugs to form weapons if he needed them, Naruto had convinced him that relying on them too much could be a weakness, not that doing so had been hard. Asuma, something of a specialist in the area of close combat with weapons, specifically his trench knives, had quite a bit of fun teaching them. Likewise, Kurenai was able to thrive teaching the other students, specifically Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke. While Naruto and Sasuke weren't that great at genjutsu, Kurenai's area of expertise, they were still able to learn a fair bit from her, Naruto more so than Sasuke, having learned rather painfully the value of genjutsu. But it was Sakura who truly bloomed under Kurenai's genjutsu tutelage, picking up what Kurenai had to teach her even faster than Naruto did. You know, said Kakashi mildly, peeking over his book to watch the three-sided team spar going on right now. This just isn't fair. I noticed that, commented Kurenai dryly. Team 7 was tearing the other two teams apart. They benefited from this group training more than the other teams did. While Shikamaru was willing to learn some genjutsu, the Nara genius was, for the most part, too lazy to bother, and Choji didn't have much talent for it. While Naruto and Sasuke were decent in it, Shino wasn't well complemented by it, and Sakura was formidable. The same was true in regards to what Asuma could teach outside his team. Ino wasn't much of a close combatant, while Kiba and Hinata were focused on taijutsu rather than the use of ninja tools, in opposition to Team 7, who made full use of them on all fronts. And outside of Sasuke, the members of Team 8 and 10 were focused on ninjutsu and taijutsu specific to their clans, so Kakashi wasn't able to teach them much either, though like Sasuke, he taught all of them Hosenka no Jutsu, as it was a low-level ninjutsu that didn't require very much chakra to perform and could serve a strong supplementary role in more than a few situations. It may not be fair, but it keeps down Sasuke and Kiba's egos, said Asuma mildly. It'll also encourage teamwork for our teams, something I'd rather have drilled into their heads before they go on C-rank missions rather than during one. I guess there is that, said Kurenai. All three Jonin winced when Naruto countered a mass Hosenka no Jutsu directed his team's way with Suryuden no Jutsu. How long did you say it took him to learn that? Kakashi blanched. An hour, he muttered. Though he cheated a bit with shadow clones, so it probably amounts to about 5 or 6 hours, which is still pretty impressive. I think we should stop this before someone gets killed, said Asuma, shaking his head. Kakashi, have you considered C-rank missions yet? Well, it's been 3 weeks, replied the Cycloptean Jonin mildly. I was thinking I'd see how they handled Tora. The other two Jonin flinched at the mention of the Hellcat. All right, you three, said Kakashi, putting away his book as he faced his students at their training grounds. Today, I'm gonna take this quite a bit more seriously. Kakashi-sensei, why are we training before missions? Asked Sakura. Kakashi chuckled. Actually, we're going to dedicate today to training, he said. You've all progressed marvelously, and I think you're ready to handle a tougher mission, but I want to make sure you're absolutely prepared, which is why I'm taking this seriously. This will also give me a chance to gauge your chakra reserves and decide if I feel you're ready to learn Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Now, just to be clear, I also want you to refrain from using any clone techniques today. Understood? Yes, Kakashi-sensei, replied all three. Good, said the Jonin. Now, here's how it's going to work. We're going to spar, the three of you against me, from the time I say start until dusk. I'm gonna be coming at you almost like you were a real enemy, so be prepared. I won't be merciful today, and that means you will get hurt. Nothing serious, but I want it understood that some wounds will be inflicted. If I declare you as unable to continue, I want you to return to the posts, rest and wait for us to finish. Everyone got it? I understand, Kakashi-sensei, replied Shino. Clear as a bell, said Naruto, smiling lightly as he summoned a shadow clone to take his hat and cloak. We'll do our best, Kakashi-sensei, finished Sakura, though she shifted slightly, showing a bit of nervousness at the prospect of injury in a mere spar. Kakashi smiled, extremely proud of his students. Sakura had perfected water walking now, and Shino had mastered it, even if he wasn't at the point the other two were just yet. Their reserves had also gone up, and Kakashi figured that, depending on the C-rank mission they took, he'd teach them Kage Bunshin no Jutsu in their spare time. All right, team, said Kakashi, drawing a kunai. Start. Hours later, all three genin were lying on the ground, panting, exhausted, and sporting a few shallow injuries courtesy of their clearly deranged sensei, with the sensei in question standing several feet away, smiling down at them with evident cheerfulness. It was a half-hour to dusk. Well now, you actually did very well for yourselves, said the Jonin cheerfully. Sakura groaned in response. Even Naruto, who combined titanic chakra reserves with virtually perfect chakra control, had been worn down by the elite Jonin. Sakura had been the first to fall after many hours of work, and Shino had followed less than an hour after. Naruto had lasted another 2 hours, but Kakashi had brought Shino and Sakura back in for the final hour, wearing them back out from their rest. A lot of time had been spent dancing around each other, but ultimately, years of experience gave Kakashi the edge needed to win. Of course, the Jonin would be the first to admit that, had he allowed them to use clones, he'd have been beaten. Which was not to say that he hadn't nearly been beaten and worn to nothing on several occasions. Those kids were persistent, but once he dealt with the female Kakechu, They just weren't good enough trackers to find someone as skilled at stealth as Kakashi without using clones, giving him plenty of opportunity for rest. His students had taken these chances as well, and while he hit it well, Kakashi couldn't have lasted much longer. He'd be in better condition if he hadn't worked to wear Naruto out as well. In an actual fight, Kakashi could kill Naruto without much threat being posed to him personally, though he'd have quite a bit of difficulty thanks to the blonde's skill with Kawarimi no Jutsu. But in a direct spar, where the goal was merely bumps and bruises, Naruto would likely win because of his godlike endurance. Well, as I said, you all did well, said Kakashi. And therefore, I see a C-rank mission in the near future. How near is something we'll find out in a few days, after you've all healed completely. In the meantime, though, how about we go get some ramen? Silence answered his inquiry at first. Then, Kakashi-sensei? Yes, Naruto? Why ramen? What? I thought you loved ramen, said Kakashi, confused. Naruto chuckled slightly. I do, he said. It's just not what I would have expected. Well, we should indulge ourselves, right? Replied Kakashi, smiling as the genin pulled themselves to their feet, groaning at their sore muscles. Even Shino couldn't maintain his usual calm attitude. Anyways, I'm paying. I'll hold you to that, said Naruto, helping Sakura stand. Oh, and Sakura-san? Please excuse my messy eating. Sakura looked confused. Why would Naruto eat messily after all this time of polite behavior? Seeing the look, Naruto whispered his next words to her. Sensei is gonna pay for today literally. Where does he put it all? Thought Sakura, watching Naruto devour his 20th bowl of ramen as Kakashi wept over the loss of his paycheck. Even now, Naruto tried to maintain some measure of politeness, even as he consumed ramen at a speed of 2 bowls per minute. Sakura had to admire that he could even maintain what he did, but she couldn't bear to watch any longer and turned back to her own ramen. Sakura's thoughts drifted slightly. She wondered how Kakashi could have been stupid enough to offer to buy food, especially ramen, for Konoha's #1 prankster. No one had ever been able to find actual proof, but everyone in the whole village knew that Naruto was responsible for the defacement of the Hokage monument a week after Kakashi's Aika collection was burned, as well as the one who'd cleaned it up by the next morning. The same held true for the ANBU headquarters being painted bright, painful neon orange a week later, only to be repainted in its original dull colors by the next morning as well. Sakura twitched slightly, thinking of that last one. Naruto was good, but how the hell did he manage to do all that right under the nose, in some cases, literally, of the entire village, including all those elite ANBU? And without ever leaving any hard evidence with which to accuse him. Heck, the blonde even managed to have an alibi for each event. It made no sense. But then again, did anything ever truly make sense when it came to Uzumaki Naruto? Sakura didn't think so. And she kind of liked that. Good to see you've got at least part of your appetite back, Naruto-kun, said I.M., smiling at the blonde as he proceeded to his 22nd bowl. Part of it? Questioned Shino. A few years ago, Naruto would have been through at least 10 more by this point, said Tsuchi with a laugh. Sakura felt her jaw nearly hit the floor at that statement. Alright Naruto, that's enough. I really can't afford any more, said Kakashi fearfully upon hearing that statement. Naruto grinned as he finished up, turning to look at Sakura. Told ya I'd make him pay. Sakura couldn't help but giggle at his words. A few days later, the radio receiver worn on Kakashi's ear crackled to life about mid-morning. This is Naruto. I've reached point A. This is Shino. I'm at point B. Sakura here. I'm at point C. Good, said Kakashi, idly wondering if they'd spot him from his hiding place. He was watching them, curious as to how they'd perform. Distance to target? 5 meters, replied Naruto. I'm ready at any time. I can move as soon as the order is given, said Shino. Me too, added Sakura. Okay, said Kakashi, lifting his headband to make sure he saw absolutely everything. He didn't think it would matter, but Naruto was on his team, and the boy consistently proved himself to be a surprising ninja, the most surprising the Cycloptean Jonin had ever met. Go! In that instant, all 3 genin moved in on their target from multiple directions. The cat in question attempted to leap away, but bounced off an oddly padded wall that had materialized from nowhere. In the next instant, it was caught in the arms of Team 7's Kunoichi, who gently held and petted the cat, calming it down quickly. The relaxing genjutsu she'd cast just before catching it probably helped. Does it have a ribbon on its right ear? Asked Kakashi redundantly as he pulled his hatai back down over his left eye. Is it the target, Tora? Yes, sensei, said Sakura. It's definitely the target. Oh, and Kakashi-sensei? Said Naruto. The only reason that shadow clone that spotted you didn't knock you down is because we don't want to rile the cat up. Kakashi chuckled lightly. I should have known, he said. In any case, this mission was completed with little difficulty. Congratulations, I've heard that cat called a menace on more than one occasion. A short while later, Team 7 stood in the office of the Hokage, watching with a measure of sympathy as Tora was crushed in the arms of an overly affectionate Madame Shirjimi, the Fire Daimyo's wife. No wonder he ran away. Now then, Team 7, for your next mission, there's murmured the Hokage, looking at the D-rank missions. Babysitting Yoju-sama's boy, grocery shopping in the neighboring town, helping dig up potatoes. No! Tora-chan. And retrieving Tora again are most common repeat. Hiruzen sighed. Actually, Hokage-sama, said Kakashi, watching along with his team in mild amusement as the cat displayed ninja-like skills in the speed of its disappearance. I would like to request a C-rank mission for my team. Needless to say, everyone present was surprised. What? Kakashi, are you crazy? Said Irika. They're only rookies, they're not ready for a C-rank mission. Do you really want to test that? Replied Kakashi softly. As his team looked back at him in a questioning manner, he placed a hand on Naruto and Sakura's shoulders. Shino, he felt, somehow didn't seem appropriate. Naruto, Sakura, Shino, I have faith in all three of them. These three were practically ready to take on C-rank missions from graduation. Their teamwork is superb, and in terms of practical skills, they're nearly the equals of Team Guy. Believe me, they are ready for a more advanced mission. Naruto and Sakura glanced at each other before grinning at how certain Kakashi was of their abilities and readiness. Irika didn't look convinced, but Hiruzen chuckled, looking at the C-rank mission scrolls. Well, if you believe they're ready, then I'll take your word for it, Kakashi, he said, while Irika looked at the Hokage in confusion as he picked up a scroll. This is a simple escort mission that shouldn't be a problem even for rookies and isn't likely to see much action. Think of it as a trial run before you get sent on anything more serious. Naruto, Sakura, Shino? What do you think? Asked Kakashi. This should serve as a good test of our readiness, answered Shino. We're ready for at least this much, added Sakura confidently. At this point, I'll accept anything to break the tedium of D-rank missions if only for a few days, said Naruto, fingering the edge of his cloak slightly. 2 years of having patience almost literally drilled into your head 1,000 times over just doesn't teach you the patience for receiving those missions endlessly. Hiruzen chuckled. Send him in, he said. The four turned to face the door as it slid open and an elderly man stepped in carrying a bottle of booze. What's this? They're all a bunch of kids, he said. They don't even look like a mild threat. The four members of Team 7 shared a glance between them before Kakashi chuckled. You really shouldn't be saying that about a living hive, a one-man army, and a brilliant young woman who blew up a 30-foot wall, he said mildly. Sakura stifled a giggle, Hiruzen and Naruto both chuckled, Irika shot Kakashi a questioning glance, Shino remained impassive, and the client blanched. He did not like the sound of that, especially the last one. All right, whatever, he said, trying to act nonchalant as he took another swig of booze. I suppose you know best. Our sensei would, said Naruto. My name's Uzumaki Naruto. And you? I am the super bridge builder Tazuna, he replied. I'll be expecting you to protect my life with your own once we return to my country, until I complete the bridge. Kakashi nodded. All right, you three, get all the necessary supplies and say any goodbyes you need to before we leave, he said. Meet at the main gate in an hour. Hi. An hour later, Kakashi demonstrated that he could be on time, when it suited him, and Team 7 departed from the gates of Konoha with Tazuna. You know, this is my first time really leaving the village, commented Sakura about an hour out. Tazuna glanced at Kakashi. Do you mean to tell me that they don't even have any experience? They have more than enough to fulfill a simple escort and protection mission of C rank, replied Kakashi, reading his book as they walked down the road. And Naruto, I'm sure, has a pretty good grip on these sorts of things. Naruto nodded. I never really took part in any missions, he said. But my senseis occasionally provided unpaid escorts to people headed in the same general direction we were traveling. Unpaid? Asked Shino. They got most of their money from turning in bounties on Nuke-Nin, answered Naruto. Shino nodded, and Kakashi glanced at Naruto from the corner of his eye. He'd been instructed not to ask questions regarding Naruto's teachers, but that didn't make him any less curious. After all, they'd brought Naruto further in a mere 2 years than most would have believed possible, and making a living off of Nuke-Nin bounties was no small feat. They must be really strong, commented Sakura. Naruto grinned. I've never met anyone stronger, he said. Ma, are you saying they're even stronger than Sandaime-sama? Said Kakashi lazily. Naruto chuckled, but didn't answer. After that, they continued their journey in silence for several hours before Sakura spoke up with a question. Tazuna-san? She said. What is it? You're from Nami no Kuni, right? Said Sakura. Yeah, what about it? Asked the bridge builder. Sakura turned her attention to Kakashi. Kakashi-sensei, are there also ninja in that country? She asked curiously. No, said Kakashi. Nami no Kuni has no ninja. But in most other countries the cultures and customs may be different, but hidden villages and ninja do exist. At this point, Naruto picked up the explanation. There are many widely varied countries across the continent, he said. To most, the presence of a hidden village and ninja force is the equivalent of military power. That's not to say the villages are ruled by the countries or vice versa, but rather, they stand on equal ground to the government. In other words, the Hokage is effectively equal in power to the fire daimyo. Kakashi nodded. For a small island country like Nami, where there is little interference from the larger countries, a hidden village isn't really needed, he continued. And within the many hidden villages, leaf, mist, cloud, sand and stone are especially large and powerful, leading to them and their countries to be known as the 5 great shinobi countries. And these are the only villages whose leaders may receive the title of Kage. Hokage, Mizukage, Reikage, Kazekage and Tsuchikage, said Naruto. In other words, the 5 most powerful shinobi in the world who, above and beyond all others, rule over the tens of thousands of ninja throughout all countries, whether through alliances or simply superior position, leaving other countries beneath their level. It sounds grim and harsh, but that's the reality of our world. So Hokage-sama is one of the most powerful people in the world? Questioned Sakura. Naruto and Kakashi chuckled before the blonde decided to supply an answer. No, although there are some who, as shinobi, are stronger than him, the truth is that, in the grand scheme of things, he is the most powerful person alive, said Naruto. Hai no Kuni has held overall dominion over the entire continent since the end of the Third Ninja World War. The Yellow Flash? Inquired Shino. Kakashi nodded. Well, enough about history, he said. In any event, this is only a C-rank mission, so there won't be any ninja combat. Then we won't come into contact with foreign ninja? Asked Sakura. Of course not, said Kakashi. Tazuna shifted slightly at this, but if anyone noticed, they didn't pay it any mind. Hiruzen looked up as the door of his office opened and Team 10 stepped through. Here for a mission? He asked mildly, sifting through the D-rank scrolls. Asuma nodded. They've been pretty insistent on getting a C-rank, but we're gonna wait one more week, he said. I'll see how they perform during the team spar this Saturday. Hiruzen chuckled. He was well aware of the group training, but obviously, Asuma had no idea that Team 7 would be gone for at least 5 days. The Hokage decided not to enlighten his son. Well, in that case, said Hiruzen, smirking as he casually picked up a D-rank mission scroll. There's a certain cat that got loose soon after it was first caught. Suffice to say, the mission was proving sufficiently dull so far, to the point that Kakashi had decided to go ahead and pull out his signature orange book of smut, much to a certain Rosette's annoyance. Naruto suppressed a yawn as the group walked past a puddle in the middle of the road, pulling out a scroll to study as Kakashi fell behind the group a little. They'd barely gone 20 feet before 2 figures emerged from the puddle, both wearing Kirigakure forehead protectors, one with a large horn in the middle of the Hittite, the other with 2 slightly smaller horns on the sides, and both wearing masks over their mouths and noses. The one with a single horn gripped the other and threw him through the air at the Konoha nin. The sound of a chain whistled through the air, and before Team 7 could react, the 2 enemy nin had Kakashi wrapped up in a sharp chain running between their gauntlets. Everyone's eyes widened in shock, and the 2 pulled on the chain, shredding the jonin to a bloody mess. That's one, whispered one of the nin as they rushed towards the back of the group, Naruto. However, unlike Sakura and Shino, who were both momentarily stunned by the apparently gruesome death of their sensei, Naruto didn't hesitate for a second, having witnessed far worse and understanding that any hesitation would mean death. As the chain wrapped around the blonde, he smirked, and the shadow clone suddenly exploded, destroying the chain and knocking both his assailants back. What? Gasped the one horn. Sakura and Shino shook off their stupor, and rushed into action, Shino creating a pair of Kikai Bunshin while Sakura drew a pair of kunai, one with an exploding tag, and stepped between the shocked Tazuna and the enemy. The Rosette threw one of the kunai towards the nin closest to her, the one with a single horn, setting the exploding tag on it. Seeing what was about to happen, he leapt back as the tag detonated. Fortunately for him, in order to avoid hurting Tazuna, Sakura had used a regular exploding tag instead of one of her custom ones. Meanwhile, Shino rushed towards the two-horn along with his clones, quickly surrounding the other nin as Kakashi swarmed from his sleeves. Two-horn scowled, and swung his gauntlet at one of the two Shinos rushing him, only for him to break down into Kakashi that swarmed over the gauntlet and began seeking openings in the clothes of the wide-eyed nin. One horn, realizing the situation was turning quickly, rushed towards Tazuna. He had to finish this, now. However, at that instant, Kakashi reappeared, completely unscathed, his arm wrapping around the neck of the nin, whose momentum continued propelling the rest of him forward, cracking his neck against the Jonin's arm and effectively incapacitating him. Two-horn was dealt with just as swiftly, Shino's Kakashi driving him straight back into one of Naruto's exploding clones. Naruto dropped out of the trees, smirking as Kakashi caught the second nin. Tazuna and the two enemies were the only ones truly surprised that Kakashi had survived. After all, anyone working with Naruto long-term got used to the extensive use of Kawarimi no Jutsu. You did well, said Kakashi, carrying the two over to a tree, where he quickly tied them up. What happened? Asked Tazuna. These two are Chunin-class ninja from Kirigakure, explained Kakashi. Their shinobi are known to keep fighting no matter the cost. How were you able to detect our action? Demanded One Horn. It's sunny and hasn't rained for the past few days, said Kakashi. Under those conditions, a puddle of water isn't going to exist in the middle of the road. Even if all my students are geniuses, that's hardly required for even a genin to notice that. If you knew that, why'd you let the brats fight? Asked Tazuna. Kakashi's eye shifted to Tazuna, and Naruto turned to face the bridge builder as well, though he kept one eye on the Kiri-nuke nin. If I wanted to, I could have killed these two instantly, answered Kakashi. But I needed to know who these two were after. Tazuna shifted nervously. What do you mean? He asked. In other words, were they after you, or someone on my team? He said. We haven't heard anything about any shinobi targeting you. Our mission was simply to protect you from armed groups, thieves, and gangs. His eye narrowed dangerously. This mission is at least a B rank now. This was supposed to be a simple protection mission until you completed the bridge. If it were known people like the Demon Brothers would be after you, it would have been set with those more expensive parameters. I'm sure you had a reason, but it complicates things when you lie about the mission. Tazuna was silent, looking away. We're now operating outside our duties. That doesn't matter, said Naruto, drawing attention to himself. We've accepted this mission. It's now our job to finish it. Even if Tazuna-san was aware of the enemies we'd be facing beforehand, it doesn't change that fact. And not all missions will stay within the original parameters. It's not unheard of for a simple C or B rank mission to become considerably more difficult. No, it isn't, agreed Kakashi. Naruto had a fair point, but even still the Cycloptean Jonin glanced at the Demon Brothers. They're a lot stronger than any of us have given them credit for, he thought. Sakura and Shino only hesitated for a second, and Naruto didn't hesitate at all. And even if being on the run for years has caused their skills to dull somewhat, for those two to be defeated so easily even if I hadn't intervened, I think Sakura could have held him off long enough for Naruto or Shino to help. But are they really ready for this? Kakashi-sensei, said Tazuna. There's something I need to talk to you about. Kurenai-sensei? Said Ino as teammate was about to begin their training for the day. What do you know about Naruto? Everyone else paused for a moment, while Kurenai eyed Ino uncertainly. Why do you ask? She replied. Ino shifted slightly. 2 years ago, he was just a troublemaker who nobody seemed to like, said the blonde. Short, loud, obnoxious, not being liked was often the best treatment he got. Hey, that's not true, objected Kiba. I got along with him pretty well. So did Choji and Shikamaru. You didn't know him very long and the four of you spent most of your time in detention for causing trouble, retorted Ino. Kurenai sighed. I can't tell you very much about Naruto-kun, said the red-eyed Jonin. The only people who know where he disappeared to for 2 years are Hokage-sama and Naruto-kun himself. About all I can tell you is that he is an orphan, extremely kind-hearted, and a fine example of what a Konoha nin should be. He better be, after his performance at the graduation exam, said Kiba, who glanced curiously at his last teammate. Hinata had been very quiet ever since Ino first asked about Naruto. That's not it, said Kurenai, shaking her head. Kakashi told me that he feels Naruto-kun has the attitude of a true ninja. He claims that Naruto-kun has a gift that has already begun to manifest itself. Kakashi feels that he can inspire others to better themselves, grow stronger, and never give up under even the most strenuous of circumstances. He says that Naruto-kun has already had a significant positive effect on both of his teammates, and he thinks this gift will grow stronger as time passes. Why yes, stuttered Hinata. And Naruto-kun has always been like that. Kurenai smiled at Hinata. The shy Hyuga heiress had been the only one to recognize that special quality of Naruto before he left, and that was likely the source of the young girl's crush on the once hyperactive blonde. Well, I think I've answered your question, said Kurenai. Let's get back to training. Team 7 was on high alert as they walked from the shores of Nami to Tazuna's residence. It had been explained to them by the bridge builder that Nami was currently poor, very poor. In fact, it had taken virtually all the resources Tazuna could scrounge together just to pay for the C-rank mission, to say nothing of the B-rank mission it should have been at the minimum. The cause was a man named Gato, a shipping magnate who'd seized complete control over Nami, its shipping routes and entire industry, driving the nation into poverty. Tazuna's bridge was a threat to Gato, as it would break his monopoly on Nami's resources. After giving his explanation, Tazuna tried to guilt the ninja into helping, but it had made no real difference. Gato was the sort of scum Naruto would have no qualms with killing, and although it was well hidden, even stoic Shino sympathized greatly with Nami's plight. Suddenly, Naruto grabbed a kunai and threw it into some bushes, catching everyone else, even Kakashi, off guard. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he stared into the bushes. Over the course of his life, he developed an incredibly acute danger sense, and both Itachi and Mai had encouraged him to trust it. Naruto-kun? Whispered Sakura. Naruto walked forward, pushing aside the bushes slightly, Kakashi right behind him. There, cowering next to the thrown kunai, was a white rabbit. While Sakura and Tazuna both brushed it off as Naruto being overly paranoid, the blonde in question, as well as Kakashi and Shino, knew something was wrong. For one, the snow rabbit's fur shouldn't be white, since it wasn't winter. Shino, less knowledgeable than the other two in that particular department, still had little difficulty detecting the small bit of chakra left over from the use of Kawarimi no Jutsu. In the trees, the group was observed by a single figure, his cold eyes focusing on the masked Jonin. Beneath the bandages covering the lower half of his face, his lips twisted into a smirk. No wonder the demon brothers failed, he whispered to himself. I never would have expected him to be here. He reached up and gripped the handle of the massive sword Kubikuribocho, strapped to his back. Grinning, he straightened, hefting the sword as though it weighed no more than a feather, and threw it like a boomerang towards Tazuna and his bodyguards. Everyone, get down! Shouted Kakashi, hearing the whistling sound practically before the sword had left its owner's hands. He pulled Tazuna to the ground as Shino dropped himself, and Naruto grabbed Sakura, pulling her to the ground as well, just as the massive sword sliced through the air where the five of them had just been mere seconds ago, continuing on to embed itself halfway through the trunk of a tree next to the water. In a blur of motion, a tall muscular figure appeared on top of the handle, his back to them and face turned so he could train one eye on the group as they stood back up. Naruto's eyes widened, recognizing the man. Momochi Zabuza, he whispered in shock. Sakura glanced at him in surprise, while Kakashi's eye narrowed. Itachi and Mai had told Naruto about the Kiri no Shinobigatana Nananinchu after they'd casually mentioned Mai's confrontation with the strongest of the swordsmen, Hashigaki Kisame. Momochi Zabuza was one former member of that dangerous group. Perhaps nowhere near as dangerous as Kisame had been, but still a nukenin of high A-class to low S-class level, which was about the same level most villages measured Kakashi at. Regardless, he was far more than Naruto, Sakura and Shino could hope to handle. Zabuza looked rather amused about something. So even a little baby can recognize me? There was a very brief flash of anger at the insult, but Naruto clamped down on it instantly. Emotional self-control was another of those things Itachi and Mai had pounded into his head. Still, continued Zabuza, I didn't expect Sharingan no Kakashi to be here. Sharingan? Questioned Sakura softly. We'll tell you later, whispered Naruto, shaking off his own concern. He quickly ran over their potential options. Although fairly certain they couldn't do anything but let Kakashi handle it, being prepared was another thing that had been drilled into his head. If something did happen to Kakashi, then there were only two real hopes for them, Shino's insects, which had at best a slim chance of success, or Naruto's secret weapons, but he'd promised Mai he wouldn't use any of those until the Chunin exams, so he put them aside as a last resort. He only knew Zabuza by reputation. Naruto didn't know enough to formulate an effective strategy, meaning he would have to improvise if it came to that. That didn't mean he couldn't get a head start though. Focusing himself carefully, Naruto combined Kage Bunshin and Henge to create 4 clones in the form of flies. Zabuza, meanwhile, also calculated the odds. Kakashi was one of the most feared and powerful men in the world. The demon of the hidden mist may have been on a similar level, but he wasn't certain he could actually win in a fight, as his opponent would no doubt read Zabuza better than Zabuza would read him. However, Kakashi was looking after Genin, and the state of the town was such that Tazuna couldn't have afforded a high-level mission like one would expect to face shinobi on. Perhaps this could be settled without a fight? "I'm here for the old man," said Zabuza. "If you'll just hand him over, I'll be on my way, and the brats won't have to get hurt." Not to say Zabuza wasn't always ready for a fight, and killing brought a unique thrill to him. But he had a mission of his own, and while risks were a part of the business, facing Kakashi was a particularly big one, and if not necessary, then Zabuza did not want to deal with it. Still, a part of him hoped Kakashi wouldn't back down. On the ground, Kakashi's eye narrowed at Zabuza's unsubtle threat, hand rising to his hitate. Like Naruto, he was quickly calculating the odds, and had come to the same basic conclusion. He was reluctant to use his Sharingan, as he did not like to rely on it, and it was extremely draining on his chakra reserves, the reason he could only use Chidori 4 times a day. However, against Zabuza, and with his students here, Naruto shifted slightly. It was so subtle that even the most experienced ninja would have thought nothing of it, normally, but Kakashi knew Naruto, probably better than anyone but his mysterious senseis right now. A small smirk formed behind Kakashi's mask as his hand lowered. Zabuza's bandaged mask did nothing to hide his surprise. "I'm afraid I can't do that, Momochi Zabuza," said Kakashi easily. "You see, even if you weren't a raging, psychopathic, mass-murdering criminal who's lived far longer than he ever should have been allowed, this is my students' first major mission, and I'd like it on record that they did well." Zabuza stared wide-eyed before a grin formed beneath his own mask, eyes widening with insanity rather than shock now. "Interesting and more fun for me, I think," he said. "Naruto, Shino, Sakura, protect Tazuna-san," ordered Kakashi, drawing a kunai. His students quickly formed a triangle around their client, who was shaking with fear already. "Naruto-kun, what are they talking about?" questioned Sakura uncertainly, grip tightening on her own kunai. "Momochi Zabuza was one of the Kiri no Shinobigatana Nananin-shu," explained Naruto softly. "Not the strongest by a long shot, but they're an elite group made up of only the strongest ninja of Kirigakure, often nearly on par with the Mizukage." Zabuza was surprised that a kid knew that kind of information. He wasn't offended that Naruto had said he was far from being the strongest, because Zabuza knew the blonde was simply being honest. "Kiri has been by far the most brutal of the major ninja villages," continued Naruto. "It's been that way ever since the second Mizukage seized power." "That's right," interjected Zabuza, sounding bored. "By the time we become genin, all ninja of our village have stained their hands with blood." "What?" gasped Sakura. "The Kiri graduation exam pits fellow students against one another," said Kakashi. "Friends, rivals, enemies, teammates, it doesn't matter. But these aren't simple spars, they're battles to the death." Sakura's eyes widened in horror. "That tradition ended years ago," said Naruto. "After one student who hadn't actually graduated slaughtered the entire graduating class single-handed. He's been known as the demon of the hidden mist ever since." Even Shino's eyes widened slightly in shock, and Tazuna was shaking enough that no one would have been surprised to hear bones rattling. "Hee, that was fun!" cried Zabuza, eyes wide with insanity. "These introductions have been interesting, but no more wasting time." Zabuza and his sword disappeared suddenly, drawing gasps of shock from Sakura, Shino and Tazuna, none of whom had ever seen anyone move so fast. Kakashi and Naruto were used to it. Actually, it seemed almost slow to Naruto even though he couldn't track it, but considering how fast Itachi and Mai were, that wasn't surprising. Of course, Zabuza wasn't trying to hide just yet, so it only took a second to find him, standing in the water, left arm raised over his head, right hand forming some kind of half-seal in front of his face. Naruto frowned, not recognizing the stance at all. "Kirigakure no Jutsu," intoned Zabuza. "Oh shit," was the only thing Naruto could think in response to that. As the thick mist formed, Naruto sensed Tazuna and his teammates started to tremble. Shino, no matter how stoic, was still an inexperienced kid in the end, and Tazuna was just an old bridge builder. Knowing he wouldn't see Zabuza in this mist until it was too late anyways, Naruto glanced at the others. To his surprise, Sakura was actually trembling the least, but he also realized she was edging slightly closer to him, probably without even realizing it. Kakashi's stance told Naruto that he was ready to move in an instant. Then, a cold feeling began to fill the pit of Naruto's stomach. Raw killing intent, the purview of psychopathic murderers, skilled assassins, blind monsters, and people like Itachi and Mai who could practically kill with a look. The killing intent most ninja knew was actually more of a minor genjutsu than anything. This killer intent was no trick though. Kakashi and Naruto had felt worse, but the others might wet themselves if it got much more intense. "I like the blonde brat, Kakashi," came Zabuza's voice, echoing all around them. "You've got serious guts, kid." "Coming from a lunatic, I don't consider that much of a compliment," said Naruto. Zabuza actually laughed. "Fair enough, but I wonder how will the other brats handle it?" At that instant, Zabuza appeared right behind Tazuna, between the three genin, sword already beginning its swing. Sasuke's blood was burning, he was absolutely livid, and had his teammates been just about anyone else, they wouldn't have blamed him. Even with Choji making noise to scare the cat in the right direction, Sasuke's ability to track it, and Shikamaru's ability to freeze it in place, catching Tora had been hard. However, Shikamaru was too lazy to be annoyed, and Choji cheered himself up easily with his bags of potato chips. Somehow, Sasuke just knew that Choji had researched storage scrolls early in order to carry more of the things around. "I'm gonna have to ask Naruto if he has any ideas for dealing with that thing," groaned Sasuke as Madame Shirjimi left, managing to keep hold of Tora this time. Hiruzen chuckled. "You may have to wait some time," he said as teammate entered to turn in their second mission of the day and pick up another. "Team 7 is on a long-term mission to Nami," said Hiruzen. Asuma and Kurenai both froze, staring wide-eyed at the Hokage, not really believing what they were hearing. "They'll be gone for at least a week." Sasuke twitched. Aside from the obvious part where the team training wouldn't work out as well, with Naruto gone, Ino's attentions would refocus on Sasuke. Sakura hardly bothered him anymore anyways. Shikamaru would rope Sasuke into shogi and Kiba would get out of hand more easily. On the bright side, Hinata would probably be less prone to fainting spells, though that was a general concern with no effect on Sasuke personally, and Choji wouldn't be a problem. But there was no upside to this for Sasuke. Hokage-sama Asuma's voice reflected his disbelief. "You gave them a C-rank mission?" He still hadn't expected this for a few more days. "A simple escort and bodyguard mission," said Hiruzen dismissively, picking up the D-rank mission scrolls. "Nothing they can handle without blinking. Small-time thugs and the like. I won't worry until I hear they're up against enemy needs." No one had even had the chance to scream before Kakashi intercepted Kubikiri Bocho with the kunai in his right hand while the one in his left dug into Zabuza's chest. Fast thought Sakura and Tazuna in disbelief. However, rather than blood, it was water coming from the hole in Zabuza's chest, alerting all four ninja to the water clone's true nature as it dissolved. "Perhaps your reputation isn't completely overblown, Kakashi," came Zabuza's voice, continuing to echo. "But now you have to make a choice." At that instant, 4 more Zabuzas appeared, one attacking Tazuna and the other 3 attacking one student each. To Zabuza's surprise, Kakashi didn't attempt to defend any of them, instead rushing out of the circle. Zabuza did not believe Kakashi was really cowardly enough for that, so he was only partially caught off guard when all 4 people his clones struck suddenly exploded. What was that? He wondered. Obviously, Kakashi had swapped his students and Tazuna out for clones of some sort, but what was with the explosions? "Trying to hide them, Kakashi?" mocked Zabuza. However, knowing trying to be quiet in this situation was hopeless, the 4 had simply been moved a little away from the explosions. Kakashi chuckled as he resumed his guard position. "I think I was kind of hoping the real you was involved," he said, slipping closer to Sakura and holding out a hand to her. Understanding immediately what Kakashi wanted, the Rosette pulled out a trio of her custom exploding tags and placed them in her sensei's hand. "What? Not smart enough to bring your own explosive tags?" Kakashi's only response was a smirk that went unnoticed beneath his mask as he attached the exploding tag to a kunai, sending a distinct look Naruto's way, disguising it as a visual search for Zabuza. Naruto, currently hyperaware, took only a few seconds to piece together what Kakashi probably wanted, and created several more disguised clones to replace the ones he'd sacrificed against Zabuza's earlier attack on the group. Zabuza eyed the group uncertainly. 3 of them were just children, so the current lack of fear was definitely wrong. The girl and the boy with the sunglasses had stopped shaking altogether. It didn't seem to be that they weren't afraid anymore so much as there seemed to be a certainty about them, such that the fear no longer affected them. Tazuna was still shaking in terror, but seemed to realize the best thing to do was to shut up and listen to whatever he was told to do. Realizing going after them again while Kakashi was still alive would be futile, the Kiri Nukenin turned his attention back to the Sharingan wielder. Deciding to get a bit more serious, Zabuza silently approached Kakashi from behind, gripping Kubikiri Bocho. He swung, full speed at the Jonin's back only to have his sword intercepted by a pair of kunai. Kakashi hadn't even turned around, arms stretched over his head instead. Zabuza immediately leapt back, disappearing back into the mist. Impressive, Kakashi. This time, Zabuza could tell Kakashi was smirking. My normal sparring partner is a taijutsu master, he said. You'd be amazed what that sort of thing can do for you. Zabuza didn't respond. Minutes passed without any more action. The Konoha Nin were all on guard, unable to determine exactly where Zabuza would strike next. Naruto's disguised clones were all in position, ready to sacrifice themselves in a substitution if necessary. Suddenly, Zabuza struck again, swinging his sword in a horizontal slash at Kakashi's abdomen. The Jonin caught it, but the force of the blow was enough to send him back several feet as Zabuza again faded into the mist. Kakashi let out a small sigh. This could last a while. When Zabuza reappeared, this time coming from Kakashi's right, he was suddenly met by 3 more Kakashis. I don't need the Sharingan to copy your techniques, Zabuza, said Kakashi calmly, turning around to face the Nuke Nin. You're not the first person I've fought who uses water clones. Even without that, such techniques are fairly commonplace in Konoha, thanks to the Nidaime Hokage. Of course, muttered Zabuza as he leapt back and vanished once more into the mist. Kakashi decided, right then and there, for the 7th or so time in his life that he really hated this technique. However, he did have a plan. Several, actually. He just needed to wait for the right opportunity. As the minutes passed, Kakashi put away one of the kunai, keeping hold of the one with the explosive tag, idly twisting it in his hand, seeming almost nervous. Again, Zabuza appeared suddenly from the mist. Again, Kakashi deflected the attack from Kubikuri Bocho and tried to counterattack, only for his opponent to dodge back and fade into the mist. This repeated several times. Tazuna could feel sweat building on his brow. Sakura was fidgeting uncertainly, wondering what would happen next. Naruto and Shino both remained calm, trying to keep calculating the situation. Kakashi remained expressionless, hardly moving other than that twisting of the kunai. A few insects flew silently through the mist, and more moved unnoticed along the ground. Sakura almost wanted to call Zabuza a coward for hiding in the mist like this. However, she remembered everything she kept hearing about being a ninja from Kakashi, Naruto, and sometimes even Shino, as well as all that she had studied. Plainly, all that told her that whether or not Zabuza was actually a coward was a moot point. His strategy was damn effective psychologically, and it was keeping him safe to ensure he succeeded in his mission. Then, Zabuza suddenly appeared before Kakashi, going for a frontal assault. The masked Jonin reacted immediately, turning the massive blade with his kunai before pulling it into a reverse grip slash, twisting his body slightly as he did so, left arm outstretched to balance himself. Zabuza leapt back again, but this time, Kakashi twisted his body in reverse and threw the kunai, activating the tag attached to it. Zabuza dodged and vanished just before the tag went off. Wait, Sakura blinked. That was a standard explosion. Had she accidentally handed Kakashi the wrong tag? Naruto and Shino were thinking the same thing. Boom! Apparently not. This then begged the following questions. When the hell did Kakashi swap Sakura's custom tag for a standard one? Where did he hide the custom one? And when did he attach it to Zabuza? Motherfucker! Roared Zabuza from the explosion, quite uncharacteristically, but it was a fairly natural reaction to his situation, if not necessary a smart one, which he realized even as the words left his lips. The mist had cleared somewhat. Shino! Shouted Kakashi. Immediately understanding, the Aburame sent his Kakashi towards the second, larger explosion. The swarm had just reached the smoking figure and barely touched him before he disappeared. I'm impressed, echoed Zabuza's panting voice. That hurt you know. Kakashi smirked, his eye briefly moving to Shino, who nodded ever so slightly. Yes, well you can blame Sakura for that one, said the Cyclopean Jonin cheerfully. Now then, I'm afraid it's over. What makes you so certain of that? The first hit is yours. It won't happen again. Ah, but you see Zabuza, I've found you. What? At that instant, Shino's entire Kakashi swarm suddenly began homing in on Zabuza, Kakashi tracking them as they made their movements obvious. Zabuza cursed, clearly confused as to how this had happened. Kakashi didn't wait, beginning his jutsu immediately, finishing the dozens of seals in the blink of an eye. Suiton, Suryuden no Jutsu! Cried Kakashi. The serpentine water dragon formed instantly, and followed after the Kakashi swarm. Damn! Cursed Zabuza. Suiton, Suryuden no Jutsu! The second dragon formed and wrapped itself around the first one, preparing to crush it to halt Kakashi's attack. Naruto, now! Shouted Kakashi. The blonde genin nodded before he and the others suddenly vanished. In that instant, Kakashi threw out his next jutsu. Suetun, Daibakufu no Jutsu! Shouted Kakashi. This time, Zabuza didn't have the chance to react, as the Kikaichu attempted to swarm him and Kakashi's water dragon blasted off a few spheres of compressed water before Zabuza's destroyed it. The waves slammed into Zabuza even as the Kikaichu fled, though none would manage to escape. The Nuke-Nin was slammed into a large tree, one of the few not washed away by Kakashi's jutsu. Dozens of kunai flew through the air and pierced Zabuza's arms, legs and torso, with a few more that pinned him to the tree before Kakashi appeared in front of him, along with Tazuna and the 3 genin, all of them completely unharmed. How? Gasped Zabuza. Shino's bugs could smell you. That's all you need to know, said Kakashi. If any of you don't want to see this, look away now. Sakura almost listened to him. However, she forced herself to watch, reminding herself again that this was reality. Kakashi lifted another kunai into the air, then needles suddenly flew through the air and pierced Zabuza's neck. It was so shocking that everyone froze, before turning their attention to a light chuckling to the side. Sorry if you wanted that for yourself, Hataki-san, said the newcomer. I've been tracking this one for some time now, and couldn't resist the chance to finish him myself. The figure seen through the mist appeared to be a young man in brown robes custom made for use in battle. Long black hair fluttered slightly in the wind, but his face was concealed by a mask with the symbol of Kiri on the front. A Kirigakure Oinin? Questioned Kakashi. He turned his attention to Zabuza's limp form and reached out for the man's wrist, feeling for a pulse. There wasn't any. So he is dead, muttered Kakashi, stepping back. The Oinin suddenly appeared next to the corpse. What's going on? Questioned Sakura. A ninja's body, even those from families without specialist techniques, contains secrets of the village they come from, explained Kakashi. When a person becomes a missing nin, they are tracked by the hunter nin. Correct, said the Oinin. It is our job to slay these deserters and destroy their bodies so that the secrets contained therein cannot be learned by others. Sakura shuddered slightly at the reminder of the sort of brutal world she'd entered. Speaking of which, if you will excuse me, I need to dispose of this one. If you're interested in the bounty, I'll pass on word to the Mizukage. Kakashi nodded, though there was something wrong with this picture. He couldn't place what it was though. The Oinin pulled Zabuza's body down from the tree, throwing the corpse's arm over his shoulder before forming a half-seal and vanishing with Shunshin. It was at that instant that it hit Kakashi, and Naruto as well. Crap! Swore Naruto. What? What's wrong? Questioned Sakura. Kakashi sighed. Let's get to Tazuna's house, he said. I'll explain more once we're there. A short while later, they arrived, and were introduced to Tazuna's daughter, Tsunami. After the introductions were over though, Kakashi took his students to the living room and sat them down to listen to their latest problem, or rather, to the problem that hadn't gotten resolved. Zabuza is alive, he said simply. Naruto nodded, having come to the same conclusion, though he wasn't certain how the Oinin had pulled it off. Shino remained silent, waiting for an explanation. Sakura blinked in surprise. Huh? But you checked and he was dead, right? She asked. Actually, it's very difficult to kill someone with needles, said Kakashi. It is, however, possible to put someone into a state of temporary death. It'll render the subject unable to act for a while, but that's a better alternative to death. Are you sure though? Wasn't the Oinin going to finish the job? I've learned a lot about the procedures surrounding Nuke-Nin, said Naruto. Oinin are supposed to dispose of the body by burning it to ashes on the spot. That guy took off with a corpse that apparently wasn't gonna stay that way for long. Kakashi nodded. So, Zabuza will be back, eventually. But we'll be fine, right? Asked Sakura, sounding worried, not that anyone blamed her. You beat him just fine this time. Next time, he'll have help, possibly from more than just the Oinin, said Kakashi. Further, part of the ease of victory this time was because he had no idea what you 3 were capable of and didn't see you as a legitimate threat, so I was able to use your talents to my advantage. That won't work a second time. He placed a hand against his Hitaite-covered left eye. I still have a few more things to throw at him, but we need to prepare ourselves for the next encounter with him. So training? Asked Naruto. Kakashi nodded. Training, he said. But first, it's been a long day. We'll rest tonight and start the training tomorrow. What kind of training, Kakashi-sensei? Asked Shino curiously. The others were surprised by him speaking up, but then realized he might be feeling a little insecure, since beating Zabuza had ended up taking out a good portion of his Kikaichu. They could breed very quickly, But right now, the hive that was his body was effectively empty compared to what it usually was. Well, under the circumstances, it has to be something that can be very helpful and potentially learned in a short period, he said. So to start, Naruto and I will be teaching the two of you how to create shadow clones. With Team 7 absent, the weekend spar was considerably fairer. Everyone realized this immediately, most especially Sasuke. In it for revenge at this point, Sasuke didn't mind trading in glory for success, especially given what he was learning from the loose friendship he'd started to develop with Naruto. In fact, Sasuke felt he was learning as much from his teammates and the other two teams as he was from Asuma. As such, Sasuke was actually reluctant to take charge and direct his teammates. Not because he had a problem being in charge, but because he could readily admit that Shikamaru was smarter than him. He was just too lazy to actually do anything, and Sasuke wanted to find a way to motivate his teammate and friend, even if he'd only admit that latter bit to himself. Choji, on the other hand, was certainly motivated, both by the promise of food and by the desire to prove himself. After thinking things through, Sasuke had instructed his team to break up the others for one-on-one fights. Being the fastest, Sasuke would take Hinata, who was likewise the fastest on her team. Choji, being the team's powerhouse, would take on his counterparts, Kiba and Akamaru. Shikamaru was the worst possible person for Ino to target with her mind-body switch techniques, and could easily lead his opponent in such a way to be able to support his teammates. Sasuke did not think of that last bit. It was a surprise for all of the genin when Kiba, Akamaru, Hinata and Ino found themselves unable to move, and the senseis called the match immediately with Team 10's first victory. The fact that it was the first time Team 7 didn't win, and then only because they weren't there, didn't really spoil the mood much. Actually, the whole thing was rather fun really. Not to say it wasn't when Team 7 was around, but there was a different kind of fun and satisfaction to be had in not getting beaten into the ground by opponents who clearly outclass you. After the group training and spar was done, Asuma and Kurenai took their teams out to lunch together. You know, Sasuke, I have to say, I'm proud of you, said Asuma, almost absent-mindedly as they were eating. What do you mean? Questioned Sasuke, frowning slightly. I guess the best way to put it would be to say, well, you've grown up, admitted Asuma. You remember the survival test? Sure, you were better than Shikamaru or Choji, but you were also an arrogant punk who wouldn't have stood a chance in the real world. But since then, you've improved, you work how you think is best with your teammates, you talk to the others, it's just a huge improvement, and I'm glad to see it. Not knowing how to respond exactly, Sasuke nodded in acknowledgement. He wasn't really offended by Asuma's assessment of the graduation, because looking back on it, he knew his teacher was right. I owe Naruto for that, admitted Sasuke slowly. The name of the blonde prankster immediately drew the attention of Ino and Hinata away from their conversation and right to Sasuke. In many ways, I guess he's taught me a lot about being more reasonable and allowing myself to lean on others for support when I can't do something on my own. It surprised everyone to hear that. But no one was as surprised as Sasuke himself. Putting it into words made him realize just how much things had changed in the short time since graduation. He even began to realize that the only possible reason to face his brother alone was rising to his brother's last taunt. He wouldn't do that. He'd avenge his clan, and bring justice crashing down on one of the greatest traitors in the history of Konoha and the Uchiha clan, one who rivaled, maybe even surpassed, the betrayal of Uchiha Madara nearly a century ago. But he wouldn't do it alone. If his friends wanted to help him, he'd gladly accept their help. But even if he never found Itachi, just in gaining these friends, Sasuke was beginning to recognize a victory over his brother. It had been 3 days since the encounter with Zabuza. Kakashi had spent the majority of that time looking out for Tazuna while he worked on the bridge, just to be on the safe side, while Naruto was tasked with teaching Sakura and Shino the shadow clone jutsu. He decided the best way to start was to have them focus on their other clone techniques first. Then, without using the mediums they normally did, water for Sakura and bugs for Shino, they were to try and create a solid clone, using the unique cross-hand seal of Kage Bunshin to focus the chakra in a different manner from the standard Bunshin, accompanied by simply trying to brute force the technique. This, of course, was just to get them started, feeling out the technique and gaining a better personal understanding of it. Learning to create shadow clones was a relatively simple process, but simple did not necessarily mean easy, especially for mere genin. Few jonin used the technique because other solid clone techniques were often much more efficient in a fight, and it was too draining for anyone to have considered it an effective training method. As far as he knew, the first person to recognize the application was Mai, but even she only recognized it on account of having large enough chakra reserves to make it useful. Right now, Sakura was lying on the ground, head in Naruto's lap, panting heavily while his shadow clones brawled somewhere nearby. I've got it, panted Sakura. Naruto smiled, shaking his head slightly. Yeah, you've got it, he said. Maybe tomorrow you'll be able to put it to use. He lifted his eyes from her to look at Shino, who was still struggling a bit. Not surprising, although he had larger chakra reserves, his chakra control was nowhere near Sakura's level, which also wasn't that surprising. It had taken Naruto the equivalent of a decade of chakra control training to achieve the level Sakura had reached in only a few months. The blonde would sometimes find himself silently marveling at the feat. Though it took him a few more hours, Shino eventually managed to create a single, successful shadow clone of his own, but collapsed soon afterwards. Sakura managed to recover a bit by this point, and the three decided to call it a day, leaving Naruto's brawling, arguing clones behind as they made their way back to Tazuna's house. Welcome back, kids, greeted Tsunami enthusiastically. Dinner's almost ready, and Dad and Kakashi-san should be back soon. Thanks, Tsunami-san, said Naruto cheerfully. Sounds good. We just finished with the assigned training, so we figured we'd talk about what to do next while we wait for dinner, our sensei, or both. Tsunami laughed lightly at this as the three genin settled down in the dining room. What were you thinking of next, Naruto? Asked Sakura. She seemed slightly less out of breath than Shino, but that made sense since she'd been resting for a while now and Shino had only just started, regardless of the difference in stamina. Well, who knows what Kakashi-sensei will think, said Naruto with a shrug. Personally, I think the best thing to do is try and bring up your reserves, probably by using shadow clones while you perform lots of water walking or regular exercises. At any rate, I don't know if we'll have time for that. Kakashi-sensei will know better. Shino nodded. There is a vast difference in both skill and power between ourselves and Kakashi-sensei, he commented. If we wish to be of help, we must find a method of bridging that gap in only a few days. Shadow clones won't be enough for that, said Sakura. Naruto, just how